Sure. Here is the translation. HTML. No matter what, Jiang Ji had already moved, reaching out to press down on the twisted light orb that had descended from the sky. The power contained within this twisted light orb, breaking free from the black and white of the old days, surged violently towards Jiang Ji. Jiang Ji stood upright instantly, not because of anything else, but simply because this power was too overwhelming. He was merging to bear it, and at the same time, he seemed like a super scion on the brink of bursting energy, with massive spiritual energy continually exploding around him. He couldn't move now, as this process required some time, and Jiang Ji could also see many ancient images, fragments encountered by the original owner of this residual power. Meanwhile, he naturally received the protection of this power, with the bursting energy repelling the tide of monsters that sought to attack him. Seeing this scene, Jiang Ji breathed a slight sigh of relief. Fortunately, there is a protective mechanism. Moreover, Jiang Ji felt something else. The power inside was incredibly vast, far beyond what Sequence 6 could handle, and the current integration was evidently because of this twisted light orb. It seemed like a mecha, and he was merely the one exerting effort to control it. As numerous adventurers competed for this fallen, unclaimed mecha, the God's Palace and Abyss were also ready, for the scattered power now was not important. The next was crucial. Boom, boom, boom. As if the earth shook and the mountains trembled, with thunderous storms penetrating everything, everyone felt a chill. After the ancient soul's residual power stubbornly revived in the ancient battlefield, everyone realized another point. The power remaining in that ancient battlefield wasn't from just one of the God's Palace. Coming. Old Huang squinted, intensely staring at the ancient battlefield projection. Those terrifying guys are all coming. Unlike the previously unclaimed twisted light orbs, the upcoming power would not only be stronger but also would carry personal will. In other words, the mecha itself also has consciousness, but it similarly needs a host. He looked back at the God's Palace, priests, bellringer, and numerous heavenly destiny people, who were prepared. They had already communicated with various wills, and the drawn power would precisely descend upon each person on the list. Old Huang then glanced towards the distant, dark, abyssal palace group. The same. A large number of venerables and selected believers were also ready to receive the projection bestowed by the abyss. Boom, boom, boom. The world changed colors at this moment, no longer flickering with different colored light orbs as before. The holy light burned with scorching, terrifying brilliance, descending with pure white elegance, like countless small suns, beginning to fall, and on the abyss side it was the same. Only blood red, black and dark gray. Merely a glance seemed to pull one into the abyss, inescapably, while also fully suppressing the God's Palace in number, exploding. Like the apocalypse. Is this the descent of the abyss? Countless people looked up at this scene, their scalps tingling. Among the venerables, they silently watched everything, naturally ready. Some would bear the power of ordinary demons, while some venerables would advance further, accepting great demons. These were Sequence 2 and Sequence 1, already possessing extraordinary powers. Currently, the highest is merely the descent of demigod power, and not many in number. The projections of bishops and priests are about to descend. Abyss priest quietly raised his head. You 5 venerables, prepare yourselves. Naturally ready at all times. Before them, the 5 venerables bore expressions of cold smiles, being exceedingly outstanding among venerables, standing in this position after many filters. They also raised their heads, looking at the sky dome, where 5 orbs entirely different from the surrounding ones resided. They contained not only terrifying auras and more intense colors, but a mere glance seemed to have voices whispering in the ears. This indicated that souls-carrying wills were contained within, not to be gazed upon, not to be touched. Coming! The 5 venerables revealed supreme fervor and bloodlust. They could receive the projection power of the bishops, already standing at the forefront, as these bishops' abilities are all demigod, with some having divine powers too. Yet, based on the traces in the old days, many existences were buried deeper. Hence what appeared weren't top-level abilities. Generally speaking, all Sequence 1 demigod figures as abilities and traces mostly correspond. The 5 thick, black light orbs before them could also be judged by size, depth, and aura as to the power of their essence. All were demigods, and with a boom, for powers accurately descended upon the venerables' bodies. All 4 knelt on one knee, welcoming the bishop's arrival, as each orb carried the bishop's will. Finally left that place. This present world still filled with foul air and annoying calm. There is something missing. Missing blood and screams. Each bishop is the most loyal subordinate of the Abyss God, embodiments of the god's power, a pursuit of all extreme evil. Besides the numerous bishops under the 4 Abyss gods, other great demons also possess their bishops, yet all are uniformly a part of the Abyss bishops. However, when everyone was thoroughly enshrouded in surging black aura, at this moment the 5th venerable lifted their head from the kneeled position. Their previously fanatical expression froze slightly. Lord Bishop? Where is he? They suddenly looked into the distance. The black light orb hadn't entered their body. Before the world tree blooms, although there are restrictions, elements like divinity, abyss totem, etc., can connect with ancient battlefield projections and communicate with the gate world. When prepared in advance, the orbs will naturally prioritize them, serving as prepped vessels to lodge and revive their strength. It's just that. Now it seems that the bishop, who should have fallen into their body, had other ideas. Lord Bishop, have you abandoned me? They murmured. At this moment, the black light orb, with overwhelming momentum, continued descending from the Abyss Palace group. Someone noticed the terrifying aura of the orb, but couldn't take any action, because the bishop orb was merely a fragment of the myriad Abyss power descending, with many low-roaring monsters receiving the black orb, and wave upon wave of demon projections emerging. Previously, the countless massive Abyss complexes in the outer space now fiercely collided with the new continent, shaking with terrifying force. On the god's palace side, numerous war armors glowed. The heavenly destiny people roared, receiving holy light. The bell ringers stood on the clouds, ringing the Hong Zhong. Everyone, you are the seeds of hope, should bloom in the future. Dear friends, lend them a hand. Kill! The first part was addressed to those receiving powers present, while the latter part was to the portion of will carried over. Those were beings who had fought side by side with the god's palace. This bell ringer is a bit rigid, but his pre-battle mobilization is indeed impressive. Old Huang watched the many heavenly destiny people roar, filled with fighting spirit, including his own 300 Hustlers members. Their eyes too burst with light. Each person appeared exhilarated. Old Huang shook his head with a bitter smile. Still not too sober, huh? He softly muttered. Clearly personal interest is most important. So why wade into this mess? Shouting mission. Future. Old Huang never thought he would fight alongside the god's palace, nor did he suspect he would lead people in a struggle against the Abyss. After all, he was tricked into it. Priest. Bai Yilan and the others were now looking at Old Huang. All members of the Hustlers sect are ready. What to say? Old Huang felt he was somewhat old, lived too long, and at this moment surprisingly felt a sense of returning to roots. Looking at these youngsters' steadfast, hopeful gazes, he suddenly found the position of Hustler's priest quite interesting. Of course, the only problem was Su Buxian still remained missing. He should be giving the pre-battle speech, and now it could only be the priest himself. He said little, waved his large hand gently. Hustlers! For the future! Fight! With a roar, everyone embodied the power from the ancient battlefield. Each person's body emitted a completely different aura. Kill! Old Huang watched the torrent on both sides. The dense crowd already moving, holy light waves and black vortices fiercely clashing together. This time, the bellringer's voice reached Old Huang's ear. Seems you've found your belonging. Belonging? I was hoodwinked onto the pirate ship. Maybe when the captain falls, I'll stab him twice and make a getaway. Old Huang calmly said. Really? The bellringer seemed unconvinced, but he could see that the man had changed, possibly because he personally nurtured so many people. Maybe because he'd hidden away and wandered for too long, or perhaps because of Su Buxian. No matter the reason, the current chit-chat was just their last few minutes of leisure time. The main battlefield had completely erupted, demigod powers continuing to descend densely, and surely next, truly terrifying beings would emerge. While below, the chaotic slaughter persisted, although ancient battlefield forces of both God's Palace and Abyss continued descending. It didn't halt numerous unclaimed light orbs from falling. Many embodied significant auras as time passed. Countless had begun the scramble. At this moment Jiang Ji already controlled the mecha he obtained, could wield powers not his own, and had some residual abilities with limited uses. Though inexperienced, it was clear the surrounding monster tide posed no threat to him anymore. Kill! Jiang Ji naturally unleashed awe-inspiring combat power, began retreating to support Nan's side. Frankly, the situation hadn't improved, and instead worsened further. Given the Abyss forces were reviving on a grand scale, the myriad shocking outbursts fiercely rocking many people's minds. Jiang Ji suddenly shivered. He saw a massive pitch-black, twisted monstrosity falling thunderously. His pupils contracted slightly. The next moment, their sanctuary jurisdictions surprisingly shattered under this force. The entire jurisdiction crumbled. Then, many watched the falling thing in horror, plunged into frenzy, recklessly and terrifyingly plunged into an adventurer's body. Forcefully, with no resistance, and unlike other gentle mergers, this was brutal enough to shatter the body completely. Just as he thought that, the person abruptly exploded in agonizing blood mist. The twisted black fog seemed displeased. Too weak, too weak. It instantly lunged at others, unleashing successive blood mists. Witnessing the scene, everyone's faces showed horror. Run! This terrifying Abyss force had chosen the people, and it was irresistible, cultivating dread that thrilled the black fog even more. Isn't this the power you wish for, bestowed by me, the Bishop of Despair? Aren't you ants honored? Its force erupted wildly. Adventurers couldn't withstand it. Along with its eerie, perilous will, everyone fled in terror. Jiang Ji's scalp tingled. It had mentioned the Abyss Bishop, didn't it? Damn it. How could such a being be here? He hesitated not, sprinting directly toward Nan's location. And the Bishop of Despair's black fog seemed to spot him. Jiang Ji inexplicably felt joy and hatred flash in its eyes. Found, there you are. Watch out! Nan also noticed and yelled. Jiang Ji's eyes widened. No time to react, as the swift black fog instantly charged at him. He couldn't understand. How could a terrifying Abyss Bishop suddenly fixate on him? But the next moment, his eyes widened. His body collided with the force fiercely. Violent energy detonated within every inch of him. Jiang Ji's consciousness was overturned by the will, directly seizing control of his body. Is this the terrifying Abyss power? Why target me? I freaking have bad luck. Su, be you. It seemed excited, murmuring something, though not yet adapting to the body, its speech unintelligible. Ultimately paused, spiritual energy formed into sound, issuing the original raspy voice. Mortal, raise your head and answer. What is your organization? Jiang Ji. Brother, I have no discipline, no organization. Bishop of Despair. Question mark. The smile grew colder. This familiar style, seemingly it hadn't mistaken its target. Bang! Jiang Ji felt his heart being forcibly squeezed. You seem to want to die. The Bishop of Despair's blood-red killing intent was about to overwhelm. No, just joking. Jiang Ji immediately dropped his sarcastic tone used with Su Buxian, knowing that it's fine to joke around with strength, but without it, it's courting death. He couldn't imitate his own sect hierarch. Well, sir, you must have the wrong person. I'm just an inconspicuous little member of the Hustlers sect, a nameless nobody. Jiang Ji recognized the situation decisively. At this very moment, boom! Nan also charged in, a true ally wanting to rescue Jiang Ji even knowing the opponent was the Abyss Bishop. But the Bishop of Despair snorted coldly, and with control over Jiang Ji's body, raised his hand to launch a terrifying attack directly at Nan. At the same time, the horrifying strength made Jiang Zi's body bleed from 7 orifices and begin to crack, considering it wouldn't so gently regard the host's body. Jiang Zi's life was now firmly in the bishop's grasp. A few more bursts of power, and Jiang Zi would turn to blood mist. Even though Nan blocked the attack carrying abyss power, his figure still trembled. After all, it hailed from the projection of the ancient battlefield, and even if only 1% of its power was available, a Sequence 6 could barely withstand it. He was just about to unleash his divinity to break free of bindings. "You seem to be—" The Bishop of Despair squinted slightly, reached out with a massive hand, and the black fog directly seized Nan. Nan's expression was grave, intending to unleash the divinity within him. Yet, his eyes flashed with hesitation, gazing silently at everything within the sky dome, then silently endured. It wasn't the time yet. Jiang Zi lamented with no tears. "Brother, you really have the wrong person. How about letting me off? No matter who you're looking for, I can guide and testify for you." In the face of perilous, desperate situations, survival was paramount. The key is, Jiang Zi was certain that the bishop definitely had the wrong person. Or perhaps the unclaimed light group he just found was the Abyss Bishop's target. Anyway, he's just a small fry, how could he be targeted? Mistaken identity? The Bishop of Despair curled a sinister smile, speaking slowly. "I'm looking for someone, and according to the clues provided by my subordinates, his name and the title he holds are used only by you." Jiang Zi and Nan exchanged looks of skeptical change. "That title? Is it Wu Yanzhu?" Jiang Zi reckoned if Su Buxian were here, he'd surely say that, and laugh annoyingly. But he couldn't, he's a normal person, uttering such words would get him headshot. Moreover, he already felt something was amiss, until the Bishop of Despair shrouded them in black fog, filled with intense killing intent, revealing a frigid smile. "The Hustlers sect, Su Buxian, don't you dare say you don't know." Jiang Zi and Nan's faces twitched slightly. In the Starfire channel, the two frantically communicated. "Really after Brother Su?" Nan's voice was solemn. "No, you thought of it too. How could I not realize it?" Jiang Zi lamented. "Aren't we just a small sect? Su Buxian getting into trouble with a venerable is one thing, but how could he provoke a presence like the Abyss Great Archbishop? You must have faith in Brother Su." Nan held back for a long time before speaking. "Those words don't fit here. Moreover, this is an ancient entity from the old days. The enmity and killing intent it harbors seem as though Su Buxian did something akin to annihilating its entire family. So, still insisting you don't know? This person," Jiang Zi's voice quivered. "We're not close." The black fog formed sharp fangs, pressed against the throats of both men. "Where is Su Buxian?" Jiang Zi gritted his teeth slightly, wanting to curse fervently. "How would I know either?" This series of misadventures put both him and Nan as lone wolves in someone else's organization from the beginning, and it reached this critical moment with no appearance. Every facade is deceitful. Instead, the enemies provoked are beyond expectation. The Bishop of Despair wasn't anxious. Even if these two spoke not a word, it had myriad ways to extract information, though a bit cruel. Its black fog was spreading, inching toward the two, capable of infiltrating their sequence and gradually probing their soul memories. Jiang Zi anxiously glanced at Nan, preparing to ask if he had any solution, but noticed the hesitation in Nan's expression, with something seemingly held within him. "Brother Nan still has a trump card? Use your trump card quickly. Brother it's no time for hesitation, we're going to die." Nan sighed hoarsely. "Sorry, it's not the time yet." He couldn't use his trump card, at least not now. Once employed, both he and Jiang Zi beside him would meet the most terrifying siege. He had to admit he'd hidden much, whether from Jiang Zi or Su Qi. His presence in that old days gate world wasn't merely due to the ancient battlefield incident. Other reasons justified so many demigods guarding him. And no matter what, he had to persist to the end. However, at this moment, An immersive transmission appeared in their vision, a voice echoing in their ears. You too. The situation seems dire, and it appears you need our help. Jiang Ji paused slightly. He immediately realized the identity of the other, as members of the Hustler sect had just contacted them in another gigantic palace. But his expression did not reveal joy. Instead, he immediately replied anxiously, "Run quickly, don't worry about us. This enemy is beyond your match." He and Anan had no power to resist at all. This kind of enemy was not something they could handle. Don't rush. The power inside you, it's not truly without a chance to fight back. You're just not familiar with the power inside your body. We will help. Attack will fall in 10 breaths. Using the power of the domain, it will reveal a flaw, and at that time you use that ancient power to drive it out. Jiang Ji listened to the voice of the other party, clear and confident, calming his somewhat unsettled heart. Understood. 10 breaths, already half past. No matter who it was on the other side, since he had explained the situation and yet the other party was still willing to act, then he naturally couldn't drop the ball. The last breath. Jiang Ji and Anan suddenly trembled in their eyes, because the surrounding domain changed, with them as the center. Large restraining star ring lines dragged them directly into the star ring. The Bishop of Despair also noticed this instantly, his brow furrowed sharply, rushing directly to the black fog. The Bishop of Despair's expression darkened slightly, raising his head. This power. It's actually from the infinite divine star. Boom! It sneered and suddenly burst out terrifying black fog. Jiang Ji groaned in pain, but his body did not rupture as before. Instead, it was protected by a force, resolutely enduring the black fog abyss power of the Bishop of Despair. But it was still not stable. The Bishop of Despair laughed coldly. Interesting, but to try to hold me back like this, isn't it too naive? The next moment, its black fog boiled frantically, rolling with astonishing breaths in turmoil. Yet, at the same time, swoosh, just like a gun emerging like a dragon. A soft hum descending, making Jiang Ji and Anan instantly feel an awe-inspiring aura falling from the sky. Swish! The burning golden light carried a devastating blast, plummeting with immense force, directly piercing through the Bishop of Despair's black fog. The Bishop of Despair groaned, not from injury, but from being merely a will and partial power, reacting naturally upon impact. Yet its gaze showed a few hints of obsession. The Heavenly Court? Is this the power of the Heavenly Court? We've been coveting it for long. It raised its head, and now Jiang Ji and Anan finally saw the two people floating above their heads at this moment. 5 fingers manipulating the star ring of Bei Xinxing, using a domain covering a radius of 10,000 meters to control here. Beside him, Yang Jian activated his heavenly eye, his index and middle fingers merging, a long spear burning with blazing golden light. Jiang Ji looked blankly at the scene. Could it be? Sorry, we arrived late. Bei Xinxing spoke gently. Yang Jian stretched out his hand, raising the gun remotely, staring at the black fog. Weren't you looking for people from the Hustler sect? Now we're here. Oh my. Jiang Ji widened his eyes, utterly shocked beyond belief. Honestly, guessing and having the other party confirm are completely different. These two terrifying existences, everything that erupted earlier in the Grand Palace, was as dazzling as the brilliance of the sun and moon, and now knowing they are actually members of the Hustler's sect, and have conversed with him. Good, good, good. The Bishop of Despair, such a character, facing such an onslaught, showed not the slightest bit of fear, instead laughed wantonly. You truly keep surprising me. Before dismembering that Su Buxian, can all become his appetizer. The Bishop of Despair snapped his fingers lightly. Instantly, tens of thousands of monsters suddenly lifted their heads, then roared madly, all rushing towards this side. What a crazy sight! Countless people watched this scene having to retreat, although unaware of what had happened. It was clear that was a place not to approach. Bei Xinxing frowned. He pressed his hands down, fully unleashing the domain. Yang Jian's heavenly eye emitted a strong golden light, starting to burst through. The forces of the abyss, even for just a trace descending, and due to the reason of the carrier now only exerting less than a tenth, yet still made them feel extremely threatened. Jiang Ji roared low, desperately controlling the ancient power he could command, frantically trying to suppress the Bishop of Despair. And Nan's eyes darkened, looking at everything around him, subtly starting to make use of his divinity. In just a few breaths, the Bishop of Despair suddenly groaned, revealing a huge flaw. Chance! Bei Xinxing and Yang Jian instantly seized this flaw. Jiang Ji roared low, going all out. Everyone was unleashing their full power. Within the Bishop of Despair's eyes was nothing but murderous intent. Yet now the black fog was being held back by multiple forces, and most crucially, it was a projected power. It didn't have much initiative, was still too impulsive. Had it first inhabited the Venerable's body, it could easily unleash over 10 times the terrifying power. Now, it's instead about to be expelled, which is not a good omen. However, things didn't go as smoothly as imagined. Boom! Seemingly like the explosion of a heavy nuclear bomb, the stunning ripple and terrifying spiritual energy erupted over at the god's palace. The mushroom cloud had formed. This power is astonishing. And this power meant the god's palace might have encountered a terrifying attack. Simultaneously, massive dark abyss light clusters carrying dense breaths crashed down. Though holy light descended over the god's palace side, it was sparse, nowhere near the same level, completely suppressed. Though Bei Xinxing and Yang Jian noticed this, now was not the time to be distracted. They must first expel the Bishop of Despair in front of them. Losing the carrier for projection, its power could no longer erupt, and Jiang Ji gritted his teeth, frenziedly supporting with all his might. Only Nan raised his head, his eyes filled with inexpressible complexity, looking at everything on the sky dome. "It's coming!" Jiang Ji heard Nan murmur, his teeth gritting. "What? What's coming?" In the next moment, amidst the rumble, a giant black light cluster, as large as the Bishop of Despair, with an unignorable astonishing speed, suddenly crashed beside them. A bloody figure within it flickered gently. "It's you." The Bishop of Despair turned his head with difficulty. "Nether River Sect Bishop, how do you appear here?" Unlike the Bishop of Despair, the Nether River Sect Bishop directly merged into a powerful elite night demon, its whole body crackling with bone transformation, large bone blades protruding. "Because I'm searching for someone too. By coincidence, you found them first." Its cold visage bore a depth distinct from the Bishop of Despair. "The Hustlers Sect." His gaze fell upon Jiang Ji and Nan. "Jiang Ji? Wait, how come it's another Abyss Bishop and damn the Hustlers again?" Question mark. The Bishop of Despair felt somewhat apprehensive facing this bishop. After all, there were hierarchies among Abyss Bishops, and its status was clearly not higher than the Nether River Sect Bishop, but it wouldn't show fear. Coldly speaking, "I advise you to back off, though I don't know why you're also searching for Su Buxian, but that guy is my target. I want to tear him into pieces." Jiang Ji felt like crying without tears. "No, your targets are both Su Buxian, so could you find him instead? We might even cheer for you." Yet, at this moment, the situation seems different. Hundreds of dark light clusters suddenly crashed nearby, with numerous dark abyssal ships casting large shadows on the sky dome. The terrifying light of the abyss fully erupted, and everything seemed to center around them. At this moment, countless people raised their heads, realizing something was amiss. The balance between the god's palace and the abyss seemed to have been broken, or perhaps there was a huge gap on the side of the god's palace, with the amount of holy light not even 1/10 of that on the abyss side. And upon closer inspection, one would find that centered around the singularity, a vast blood-red shadow was deeply buried in darkness, spreading like a spider web, enveloping the entire starry sky. The Bishop of Despair watched this scene. "This is the ritual arranged earlier. It seems you have been somewhat neglectful of your duties, ignoring many details due to hatred," said the Nether River Sect Bishop coldly. Although the Bishop of Despair was apprehensive, he replied solemnly, You are no different. The Nether River sect bishop looked at the scene. I am searching for Su Buxian, but it's for the other person he took away, and since the choice of this person being present is enough. The Nether River sect bishop glanced at Anan, whose expression was grim. Blood-red ritual seals the passage between the ancient gate and the god's palace, a large amount of power from the god's palace. The gate world now feels like it's bound by chains. Most of the power cannot descend. The key to open the depths of the ancient days in the god's palace. Now, the Nether River sect bishop looked at Anan. It's on you. Jiang Ji widened his eyes. Brother Anan? Anan did not speak, but the divinity on him was already burning fiercely, even more magnificent than before. Then, he roared. Run! Boom! The divinity exploded like a sun. The astonishing light carrying a terrifying aura made everything around unconsciously retreat. Even the Bishop of Despair was suddenly pulled out of Jiang Ji's body. Jiang Ji's entire body was sent flying several kilometers and was caught by Bei Xinxing and Yang Jian. He hurriedly turned his head back. What the hell is going on? At this moment, Anan's divinity, like a small sun, shot straight into the sky, while the Nether River sect bishop looked coldly on, and a large amount of attacks had already erupted to stop that divinity from rushing towards the sky dome. Bei Xinxing watched the scene, slightly frowning. I've seen him before. He was with Su Buxian in that gate world. He himself was puzzled at that time. Why in the world within the ancient gate would there be a divine sun with the strength of Sequence 7? One should know that those who could be covered by the ancient gate were the ones who battled in that final battle, fighting to the end, and the emergence of such a divine sun was indeed too conspicuous. However, frequent events at that time not only left him no chance to exert his strength, but also no time to probe into this matter. And now seeing this scene, Yang Jian squinted, his eyes glowing with golden light, looking at the divinity within, whispering, So that's how it is. Though it's unclear exactly what happened, this divine sun's body is filled with a large amount of different divinities, hidden rituals within his body containing it. Now it erupts, and it's for the divine summon to break. Yang Jian looked up. The blood-colored confinement of the abyss. It was the key to break the confinement, not knowing who left it as a contingency, but now it seemed to have been noticed by the abyss. Jiang Ji murmured, So that's how it was. Previously in the jurisdiction, when Anan failed to summon the divine summon with divinity, it now seemed not only because he couldn't do it, but because he had a bigger mission. What do we do now? Jiang Ji murmured. A large portion of the abyss's power now suppresses the god's palace, and a small part is dealing with Anan, and moreover, there are 2 bishops, numerous demons residing in the venerable, and the surrounding tide-like monsters. Without the immense divinity and ritual sanctuary within his body, Anan would likely have been killed by now. He is a member of the Hustlers sect, right? Yes. Jiang Ji nodded blankly. It was Su Buxian who personally brought him out, right? Seems like that's the case. Anan trusts brother Su greatly. What about Su Buxian? What did he do? Bei Xinxing gently asked. Jiang Ji shook his head. After sending us to the palace of another god's son, he disappeared, instructing us to identify as the Hustlers sect. Said in the end not to worry, the Hustlers sect would have support. But now it seems completely different. Jiang Ji intended to complain at this point, but paused. I'm not saying you 2 don't count as support. It's just that everything happening now has exceeded expectations and control. Bei Xinxing nodded lightly. Then it's fine. Although neither of us can stop all this, actually the problem isn't huge. Su Buxian specifically left us a palace authority. We were puzzled earlier thinking it might not be needed, but now I understand he planned for this moment. Jiang Ji froze again. Wait, what palace, what authority? Without hesitation, Bei Xinxing and Yang Jian, figures behind them emerged with a huge palace projection. All areas of this huge palace are named for the Hustlers sect, so naturally the controller is Su Buxian. Jiang Ji's brow twitched. And upon promotion, the palace will have a new ability, which will naturally consume nearly 2/3 of the current points. Bei Shenxing looked at Yang Jian. This is part of the plan, an important step for Starfire. That guy, can't imagine how exactly he prepared to this step. No matter what, time waits for no one. Come on. The two pressed their handprints together, permissions need mutual confirmation, and in the next moment, that grand hustler palace, all the light dots floating around, at this moment were actually all gathering together. And then, it soared into the sky. What is this? Jiang Ji watched the entire scene above, occupied by endless brilliant colors, as numerous strange patterns spread out with a thunderous roar. You can consider it as a rescue signal, similar to divine summon, capable of gathering people scattered outside the palace. Bei Shenxing paused. Of course, given that the Hustlers sect has no support, it is now just an energy eruption soaring into the sky. However, it's enough to open a breach. It contains functions similar to divine summon, and its power composition is actually quite similar. Right now, the target is precisely the suppressed god's palace. With a thunderous roar, a breach was opened in the god's palace. Without any hesitation, tens of thousands charged directly through the breach to escape. Attack! They were clad in war armor, possessing various ancient powers, and instantly charged toward Nan's direction. At this moment, the bellringer was also engaged in combat with the Abyss Bishop, his gaze intense. Ambushed by the Abyss, although they were about to deal with this confinement, someone helped resolve the ambush in advance. Turned out to be quite helpful to them. Now, fully protect the Child of Destiny. Ensure the divinity reaches the other shore of the old days successfully. The bellringer roared, the majestic sound of Hong Zhong striking, resonating in the eardrums of everyone on the new continent. The Abyss Bishop chuckled coldly. How can you accomplish that now? The Eye of Destiny predicted the Child of Destiny countless ages ago. Although it didn't specify whom, it was the key to opening the old days channel. After evaluation, they chose Wind God Sun and Nan as the candidate. A large group of demigods was dispatched to protect him. Few knew about it, and no one expected. The Abyss seemed more knowledgeable about the Eye of Destiny's prediction, as if all trajectories were known, and now preemptively ambushed, leaving them passive. Regardless, the most important thing now is to protect Nan, the Child of Destiny. Jiang Ji widened his eyes, watching tens of thousands fall, fierce battles, and eruptions of ancient powers simultaneously, the terrifying talents of heavenly destiny people, and the brazen murderous intent of the Venerable struck together. So, Brother Nan is of such significance. He is the key to all this, the protagonist on this stage. Jiang Ji murmured, Does Su Buxian know? He was now bewildered, feeling as though he had been sold, unwittingly pressed onto a massive vortex, unable to escape, still uncertain of Bai Yilan's whereabouts. Yet, are you ready? We need to act as well, Bei Shenxing said softly. Or do you? Naturally, I will participate. Jiang Ji clenched his fist. Although Nan is the Child of Destiny, before that, he's a member of the Hustlers sect, my brother. Then, let's attack. The three of them simultaneously erupted. Jiang Ji wielded ancient power, able to open a path amidst Bei Shenxing and Yang Jian. The Nether River sect master looked indifferently at everything, having already fused with a venerable, its will dominant. Bishop of Despair, are you still standing there? The Bishop of Despair grumbled. Don't rush. I'm also fusing right now. Eventually, it fused with the previously designated venerable, experiencing the remarkable strength the venerable had longed for. But they still didn't have autonomy. The terrifying projections of the two bishops behind were the ones in control. Indeed, this power feels comfortable. The Bishop of Despair clearly felt it could exert more, its gaze cold as it looked into the distance. I will kill them all, leaving Su Buxian with nothing left. The Nether River sect master, however, blocked him with a long blade, speaking coldly. We've found the Child of Destiny, so Su Buxian is no longer important. Now, we must slaughter everyone attempting to save him before his divinity fully erupts. The Nether River Sect Master was calm and cold, its eyes deep. It was wholly unlike the Bishop of Despair. Everything was for the abyss. Searching for Su Buxian was merely to find the abducted Anan. This time, it's not just about awakening, but there's an even more ultimate plan. And that is, on this territory, to utterly obliterate the God's Palace. There's no better opportunity. They have nurtured this power for too long. Boom! Heavenly Destiny people and Venerable were similar. Although the battle erupted, ancient power revealed projections behind. The wills of the great powerhouses descended at this moment. Truly, a dire situation. How long has that child of Destiny's divine protection shielded him? Everyone, lend us a hand. 3 projections slowly spoke. All right. In the next moment, 1,000 people simultaneously erupted with astonishing strength. The ancient power surged through the air, tearing a massive rift as if a supernova exploded. Simultaneously, another 1,000 charged forward, clearing the way for these 3. The Nether River Sect Master watched coldly without speaking or moving, like a final-level boss controlling everything. Not to mention the Bishop of Despair was also present, albeit weaker, but still capable of sweeping away everything. Those 3, Bei Xinqing observed the 3 projections charging. They're demigods, and all legendary figures from ancient times at the heroic level. So to speak, Jiang Ji, releasing his power, also helped pave the way for them. I have no concept. Yang Jian softly said, You know that bell ringer from the God's Palace. Jiang Ji looked up at the terrifying presence in the sky dome, battling the bishop with overwhelming power. These 3 are the same kind as the bell ringer. It seems we're not needed. Jiang Ji watched this scene. The power of the God's Palace was naturally astonishing, and thousands, all heavenly destiny people in war armor, wouldn't make much difference. Yang Jian's heavenly eye glanced at Anan. Can't say. His divine protection is about to end, and I feel a bit uneasy. The Nether River Sect Master and Bishop of Despair's eyes were cold as they stared at the 3, rapidly approaching with the crowd. Deafening explosions shook the heavens and the earth. Long time no see, but one of the demigods raised a hand. It's time for you all to exit. They too came prepared, and other heavenly destiny people were now clashing with the many venerables guarding around. Their hands wielded various holy light items, imbued with ancient aura and domains, covering everything directly. From all directions, immense concentrated lightning surged. Sword beams shot to the sky, unleashing an unresistible momentum. All blasted forward together. Though caught passively in the plan, the battle was already well prepared. Great! Jiang Ji almost clapped. Fluent execution. All the damage dealt out. Bei Xinqing and Yang Jian's eyebrows slightly relaxed. For besides those ancient powers, both the Nether River Sect Master and Bishop of Despair were directly driven into the ground. This new continent's ground couldn't be cracked by ordinary force. Even they needed to unleash powerful attacks to split it. Beep, beep, beep. At this moment, Jiang Ji, Bei Xinqing, and Yang Jian were taken aback, as a message forcefully popped up before them. This is. 2 moments later, the entire ground will crack open. 2 moments later. In that instant, the ground centered on Anan split open with a colossal chasm, a full 10,000 meters. 5 moments later, there will appear heavenly girls scattering flowers. They hurriedly looked ahead. In the huge cloud of dust, countless heavenly destiny people were blasted into the air like kites with broken strings. What on earth is this? Yang Jian displayed a look of extreme suspicion. 100 moments later, Anan's divine nature loses protection. 3 demigod projections are defeated, and then Anan is killed. The God's Palace loses the key to open the passage forever. This information changed the expressions of the 3. But no need to worry. 200 moments later, a dashing existence will descend to save it all. Great. Wait a minute. Jiang Ji's eyes widened. 200 moments later. By then, what's there to save? The corpse will be cold. Su Buxian. Without a doubt, This message was from Su Buxian. This tone, this teasing emotion, and this starfire. One couldn't think of anyone else. And in the next moment, no more messages appeared. Instead, Su Qi's voice, with a faint chuckle, said, "So, before the bad end happens, I need you all to buy me a little time. These 100 moments." I don't know why, but Jiang Ji felt slightly relieved when he heard Su Qi's voice. At last, someone who can control the situation appeared. After all, before it was always Su Buxian who acted and saved them from dire situations, though why they were in dire situations shouldn't be asked. But, no, 100 breaths. Jiang Ji suddenly realized. His eyes widened, and he ranted frantically. "Su Buxian, you just mentioned 100 breaths, right? The 3 demigods and those 2 bishops have been barely holding on for that long. Why should we be able to extend these 100 breaths? Also, where exactly are you now? Who is that great being? Can he really reverse all of this?" Su Buxian, on the other side, merely smiled and said, "The signal is bad. Long distance is quite expensive, hanging up." Then the 3 of them heard the unmistakable beep, beep, beep sound on the phone. Question mark. Jiang Ji bit his teeth. What rubbish about the long-distance signal being bad? It's clearly because he doesn't want to answer. Bei Xinxing and Yang Jian, though silent, listened to the entire conversation. 100 breaths. Their eyes, filled with fighting spirit, looked towards the distant battle where everything was erupting. The Nether River Bishop and the Bishop of Despair, the terrifying abyss power of the 2, deep to the extreme, unfolded their domain like a swamp. The faces of the 3 demigods were calm, but if you looked closely, you could see some seriousness. More importantly, Nan, who has now lost the protection of divinity, is plunged into a state of stupor, unable to move or awaken, can be seen to hold a significantly large ritual. He now is at his most vulnerable, must be taken to higher ground. Fine then, let's go. Bei Xinxing and Yang Jian were eager. "No, you have confidence, I don't." Jiang Ji lamented. Although these 2 also claimed to be members of the Hustlers sect, they were figures even God's Son feared. Can he compare? "Don't underestimate yourself," Bei Xinxing lightly said. "Why do you think Su Buxian called you? Because you are the key to fighting against the Abyss Bishop." "Me?" Jiang Ji incredulously pointed at himself. "Me against the Abyss Bishop? After all, we do not have any ancient power in our bodies." Yang Jian looked forward. "So the real turning point is on you." Jiang Ji paused. "But I just confronted that Abyss Bishop and was not a match at all." The sense of hopelessness at that time made Jiang Ji give up the resistance, could only pretend to beg for mercy. "That's just because you haven't controlled that part of the power. Don't underestimate each existence that fought in the final war on the ancient battlefield. Next, try to integrate as much as possible the power within yourself. Although it's ownerless and without will to help you control it, it will raise your limit once mastered. It will certainly have astonishing effects." Jiang Ji took a deep breath. "I understand." He calmed himself while approaching, beginning to concentrate completely on melding his spiritual power with spiritual energy, and communicating with the ancient power. Time was urgent. He had to complete the communication rapidly, and increase the limit as much as possible. "Kill!" Yang Jian and Bei Xinxing were already stepping forward, blowing away the incoming monster tide, bursting their domain above the enormous trench, supporting the 3 demigods from the side. Although he didn't know why Su Buxian can foresee what will happen, Yang Jian knew the variables he spoke of were actually them. Even if uncertain whether joining now can extend the time before defeat, they must go all out. The projection of the 3 demigods was suppressed by the pouring black fog. Abyss power erupted overwhelmingly in the blink of an eye, continuously rushing out from the Nether River Bishop's body. Boom! Once entering into their domain, they could hear the energy within every inch of space expanding and exploding. The powerful forces of the 2 weakened instantly in between them. "I'm here." At this moment Jiang Ji raised his hand. His whole body carried an incredible bursting energy. The ancient power surged out with his spiritual energy's guidance. He was imposing as a rainbow, directly penetrating through with Bei Xinqing and Yang Jian's strength. I think I've now mastered it. Jiang Ji clapped his hands. 3 seniors. We're here to assist you. He felt great at the moment because only now did Jiang Ji realize the ancient power's vastness. Fully integrated, could exert stronger strength than before. Now, compared to the heavenly destiny people hosting the projections of demigods before him, he might not fall short. Good. Bei Xinqing and Yang Jian brightened their eyes at this scene, honestly having expectations of Jiang Ji, but to control the ancient power in such a short time, and seemingly burst out stronger combat than anticipated. This is undoubtedly a surprise, proves Jiang Ji is also a supernova not losing to various heavenly pride. The Nether River Bishop and the Bishop of Despair coldly watched these 3 enter the battle. No change in their gestures. All were terrifying black fog and endless killing intent. When you think there's hope, you'll just find. This hope is but a spark in the abyss, extinguished in no time. It and the Venerable hosting the Bishop of Despair let out a painful groan. And in the next moment, a vast number of abyss totems, blood-colored patterns suddenly coursed through their bodies. Boom! The 3 demigods calmly stared at the opponent. Such violent burning of spiritual energy. Really don't treat their own people as people, but this is also the abyss's unscrupulous measures. The 3 heavenly destiny people grunted, likewise beginning to burn their spiritual energy, but not as fiercely, more gently. To be honest, the use of all ancient powers is inherently connected to the vessel. The vessel uses ancient power, essentially exchanging spiritual energy for stronger abilities, explosions, and so forth. The previous mecha theory applies entirely as well. The vessel provides spiritual energy as fuel to ignite and propel the mecha, while the abyss completely disregards the Venerable's life, initiating the strongest overload directly. And not just that. The Bishop of the Nether River raised a hand. A heavy blood-red domain pressed down from the sky dome. Boom, boom, boom. Jiang Ji and the others were all suppressed, their scalps tingling as they gritted their teeth, struggling to lift their heads. What is this? A projection of a demigod spoke hoarsely. Blood demon power. Its body contains the power of the blood demon. That is the Lord of Blood Demon. A terrifying presence even among the gods. Even just a trace of its power carries terrifying suppression, and the blood energy within them now boiled completely, each person's eyes filling with blood. They could only use spiritual energy to suppress it frantically. Then next, with a resounding boom, the Bishop of the Nether River raised a hand. A gigantic blood-red blade as huge as a mountain, composed of countless corpses and flesh, wielded devastating power. It hung directly above the group's heads, blotting out the sky. Now, your last words, it said coldly. There's no time for you to say them. Without the slightest hesitation, a trace of power from the Lord of Blood Demon had already transformed into a monstrous blood blade, descending from the sky. The eyes of the 3 demigods darkened, yet there was nothing they could do. The heavenly destiny people could not fully wield their power. Boom! An enormous impact rang out, causing the entire ground to shake violently. The group was forcibly cleaved into this abyss-like chasm, and within it, a sea of blood corrodes everything. Every drop of blood that fell on the new continent's surface caused a terrifying corrosive change. The ground that even a Sequence 6 had to strike with full force to crack was now eroded into a large pit directly. The Bishop of Despair looked at this scene, a flicker of jealousy and dread in his eyes. Only bishops of the upper echelons could obtain the power of the true God, and it was evidently not among them. However, the Bishop of the Nether River was also greatly exhausted. Even the Venerable it resided in was covered with significant wounds. Yet the Bishop of the Nether River continued to look on coldly, the murderous intent on its body not diminishing one bit as it stared into the distance. And this matter, on the distant ground, Jiang Ji was bursting with astonishing spiritual energy, panting heavily, holding a group of people in his arms. He had managed to escape from the terrifying 10-mile radius attack. Not only had he fled with the group, but he had also brought a Nan out who was within the attack range. What just happened? Bei Xinxing was stunned. It was a spatial fluctuation, a demigod stated hoarsely. A demigod looked towards Jiang Ji. Such a rare, special power, and you managed to acquire it. Jiang Ji was still panting, his face somewhat pale, evidently having expended a great deal of energy in the recent spatial transfer, and had yet to recover. I don't know, but there was a mysterious sensation, and then I used it. He remembered something and hurriedly looked up at Bei Xinxing and Yang Jian. How much time has passed now? Just 100 breaths ago, Bei Xinxing said with utmost gravity. Damn! Turns out Su Buxian was right. The three demigods were now looking into the distance. Although we don't know who you are, the situation is dire. Can you use that ability again to take the child of destiny away from here? Jiang Ji shook his head. That ability, I can only use it once. Now his spiritual energy was almost depleted. They were now fleeing frantically, relying on their remaining power. The Bishop of the Nether River and the Bishop of Despair were closing in fast, their eyes filled with boundless killing intent. The God's Palace is being held back, and our other forces have also become entangled in battle. The fallen masses were now locked in combat with waves of Abyss believers and monsters, leaving no chance of support at all. Then it has to be this way. We'll hold them off, and you take the child of destiny and leave. Seeing the adversaries getting closer, the eyes of the three heavenly destiny people were filled with resolve. They had to gamble, bet that they could take away the child of destiny, break the lock restraining them. The God's Palace was now tightly suppressed, the real reason being that the true large-scale power had not yet descended. This key was necessary. Otherwise, if an even more terrifying power from the abyss descended, it could slaughter countless people with just a snap of a finger. Time was of the essence. Every second counts. The God's Palace needed liberation. No! Yang Jian stopped the heavenly destiny people, looking at the demigod projections behind them. Going there will lead only to death, and without our support, you won't hold out long at all. His third eye was watching countless trajectories. If we want to survive the remaining time, no one can die now. This was the possibility he saw, confirming Su Buxian's last words. Not to die easily. The Bishop of the Nether River and the Bishop of Despair looked at each other coldly, fast approaching. Although oblivious to the earlier spatial fluctuation, they needed a swift victory. That so-called child of destiny, although partly blocked by the divinity within them, still incited the ancient battlefield projection and old days gate world's fluctuation. The foe must be killed before its next burst. Swish! They pressed both hands, and massive black fog took the form of a vast land, barreling toward everyone from all directions. Simultaneously, their eyes flashed as a cold gleam swiftly approached from 10 miles away. Thousands of meters of black spikes. Dodge! Yang Jian was the first to react. He let out a low roar, and everyone barely dodged. Endless fierce attacks continued to surge from all directions. It's like a kill zone. Any slight mistake in any second and they would fall into deadly danger. Time. There was no time to ponder. They had to focus entirely just to barely find a way to break through all the lethal traps. The demigods couldn't unleash their power. They could only provide sanctuary, quickly alerting them when some fatal attacks were being built up. But things never go as easily as imagined, because a thunderous roar sounded in everyone's ears. Boom! Countless people turned their shocked, horrified gazes to the sky. That is, masses of the God's Palace's structures and space fragments were crashing down like meteors. The abyss black power had already destroyed a corner of the God's Palace in the distant deep space. The expressions of the three demigods turned extremely grave, faces very grim. A corner of the God's Palace had crumbled, reflecting the state of the battle above. Bad. Though their minds were steadfast, the heavenly destiny people and Jiang Ji were affected, showing flaws. And in the next moment, the group trembled violently, as their bodies were slammed by a 100-meter palm formed of black fog. Boom! The massive hand landed, scattering black fog thousands of meters around. and as it dissipated, the Bishop of the Nether River had finally let some of its killing intent spill over its eyes. The group lay on the ground, their bodies severely injured. The black fog contained not only power but also corrosive effects, numbing spiritual energy and so on. Look! The Bishop of Despair and the Bishop of the Nether River stood in front of them, lifting its head lightly. A new power has awakened. In the sky dome, countless dense black globes were falling, larger and more terrifying than before, rendering the holy light from the god's palace utterly insignificant. This apocalyptic scene caused countless people to sink into fear, despair, and numbness. Huge black light orbs fell with a thunderous crash. The violent tremor shook the entire new continent. They were severely injured, but the giant black mist hand that had just struck had also restricted their spiritual energy. Now they were in a brief state of numbness, and this short period was enough to make them lose all hope. The Bishop of the Nether River stood amidst the roaring explosion, raising the black fog blood blade with a cold gleam, and said slowly, "This is the abyss." The blood blade came from the front with fierce killing intent, arriving with violence. There was simply no resistance. Jiang Ji gritted his teeth tightly and suddenly roared in anger. "Get out of my way!" The next moment, he unexpectedly extracted his ancient strength from within his body. This strength, which was so difficult to control, was directly ripped from his body. But at the same time, the twisted light orbs suddenly expanded, forcefully blocking the blood blade's attack this time. Now Jiang Ji's entire body was broken, gasping for air, unable to move even a finger. The Bishop of the Nether River looked at all this calmly. It's a pointless struggle, and quite foolish, akin to abandoning this strength just to block this attack with no real effect. The Heavenly Destiny people gritted their teeth. They couldn't do what Jiang Ji did, because their demigod strength had consciousness and couldn't be easily extracted like unowned strength. What to do? Is everything going to end? Fate has been judged by the abyss. All constants have been accounted for. The demigods seemed to have glimpsed a key insight. Their eyes displayed an unbelievably heavy expression. There was a traitor within the god's palace. But now is not the time to think about this. Although the Bishop of Despair continued to sneer, "Don't kill them yet. I still want to ask a few more questions." However, the expression on the Bishop of the Nether River's face did not change even a bit. Its attack was already poised, with terrifying blood energy soaring to the sky. No unnecessary words, no delay at all. Directly attacking the crowd. "Open!" Yang Jian suddenly shouted. His heavenly eye emitted infinite golden light, soaring into the sky, blocking the blood blade, the bloodline of the heavenly court's son. This unique and powerful strength was astonishing, and this was Yang Jian's last trump card, even causing the blood blade to falter. However, it only lasted less than 5 breaths. Then shattered directly, the Bishop of the Nether River kept a cold face, continuing to strike down. Bei Xinqing spat out blood, trembling fingers raised as the star ring of the infinite divine star expanded. This time lasted only 3 breaths. 3 heavenly destiny people burned their spiritual energy, unleashing their last strength. This time lasted only 2 breaths. The Bishop of Despair watched this scene. "You are really difficult to kill. However, that's not important." All they unleashed now was a desperate bet, pouring all their strength in, akin to self-destruction with no follow-up strength. And at this moment, it suddenly noticed Jiang Ji's lips, though bloodless, seemed to tremble rhythmically. "The time has come." The Bishop of Despair narrowed its eyes. "What time?" On the ancient battlefield projection, at this moment, countless black light orbs continued to fall densely, and with each touch on the ground, a demon was born. Among them, a particularly unnoticed peculiar light orb fell rapidly from the mass of holy light and black light orbs. If you looked closely, carrying a color denser than countless abyss-falling light orbs, and a white more dazzling than the countless holy light orbs descended by the god's palace. It didn't draw attention from the crowd, because amidst the dense array of light orbs, an odd star was not a big deal. Moreover, though half black and half white, the orb was very small, like it was compressed. Now the battle in the god's palace was particularly fierce. Countless people watched the conflict there, and no one noticed this light orb. The bishop of the Nether River also didn't notice, having lost its patience. Clang! And the blood blade was already aimed at slicing through space, carrying a deadly, inevitable impact. And now these people had no strength left to unleash. The Bishop of Despair was more prepared, sealing everything with black mist and imprisoning it. This hopeless situation. Jiang Ji suddenly lifted his head, roaring angrily, "Su Buxian, where the heck are you?" The Bishop of Despair raised an eyebrow, naturally having a reaction to those three words. But the Bishop of the Nether River remained unmoved. The blood blade suddenly chopped down. And the next moment, the entire crowd's figures became virtual. The Bishop of the Nether River focused its gaze, but wasn't too surprised. Virtual space. It had naturally seen much, and this power came from above. It raised its head and saw a rapidly spinning black and white orb plummeting towards their location at terrifying speed. Support from the god's palace? At this moment, the battle in the god's palace was fierce, unable to protect itself, and the entire space was completely sealed. No one could exit. But it didn't matter. Bang! The power of the abyss reached terrifying extremes, easily bypassing various physical attacks in the virtual space, and now leading to various fractures. Just in an instant, this virtual space collapsed. But at the same time, boom! The sound of an impact made the whole ground tremble. Instantly, the Bishop of the Nether River furrowed its brows, sensing something was wrong, because within that black and white orb, there was an extremely ominous aura. Everyone who leaves the black and white old days will somewhat be tainted with an ominous aura, but it often fades quickly due to the overwhelming marks of the present world. Yet the ominous aura of the black and white light mass before him surpassed his imagination, and what seeped through was just the tip of the iceberg. However, now wasn't the time to dwell on this, as the Bishop of the Nether River erupted almost instantly once again, because it had sensed something was amiss. In the next moment, the Bishop of the Nether River felt a powerful restrictive force from the blood blade in its hand, and the surrounding air was intensely compressed. There was a slight stagnation in its body, and then, everyone was seized by a fleeting shadow and soared upwards. Su Buxian. Jiang Ji's face lit up with joy, but the next moment his eyes widened. You this! Su Qi before him had undergone some changes. Firstly, his hair was half black, half white. His eyes were the same black and white pupils. Jiang Ji couldn't help but look at other parts of Su Qi. It's a bit disappointing. Jiang Ji, my young friend, you even check out men. It's more disappointing. Su Qi's indifferent voice came. Jiang Ji's eyes widened. Damn! Is this even a matter? Where did you go? How did you become like this? Behind Su Qi was a hand of spiritual energy, directly enveloping them as they sped forward. Of course, behind were the Bishop of the Nether River and the Bishop of Despair, following quickly. Went to a very interesting place. Became like this. Can only say. Su Qi calmly said. Graduated from the age of being juvenile. Should mature. Oh! Shouldn't this appearance be the most juvenile? Bei Xinxing finally couldn't help but roar. Moreover, seems to have answered a lot, but none were useful. Su Qi smiled lightly. Ask so much, you'll lose the element of surprise. Surprise! The three demigods and the heavenly destiny people watched their conversation. By the look, all three faces did not carry an expression of surprise. Yang Jian was somewhat confused, while Bei Xinxing and Jiang Ji wore worried looks. The two knew Su Buxian best. Hearing the word surprise, they had to deliberate carefully, because 80% of the time it meant shock. Boom! A fierce blood aura came with a chilling glint from the side. Careful! The nearby demigod immediately warned. Su Qi released spiritual energy lightly, the black and white afterglow surprisingly included, directly taking everyone away from the chilling glint. Such unique strength. Several demigods were somewhat surprised it was not an explosion just now, but the use of some ability traits easily dodging the attack. Careful not to relax. Yang Jian roared, coming from the left. His heavenly eye could predict the scene a few breaths later. Su Qi casually said, should be more precise. It's 54 degrees from the left. Then above. Below. Total of 9 fatal attacks. Yang Jian was startled. And what followed was exactly as Su Qi said. Sharp killing intent came crashing from other directions. They were demon venerables merging demon power, also coming from all around. To be precise, there was not just these. The abyss was currently in total suppression, whether the gods' palace above or adventurers below, as well as the heavenly destiny people supporting. All were overwhelmed by the tide of monsters, pressed by a massive force descending. On the verge of crisis, facing destruction. He is the child of destiny. The gods' palace now is in decline. Fully suppressed. Now these are just trivial forces to hold you back. A demigod said hoarsely, if you truly want to escape with him from the heavy encirclement, there will be thousands of troops, more strong existences coming to stop you. We burned our strength too early. The projections of the 3 demigods said heavily. Indeed, Su Qi maneuvered everyone between dodges, for the Bishop of Despair's black fog had expanded its domain, forming a confinement with a massive black fog. Seems like things are slightly not very good. What do you mean slightly? We're about to be ashes. Su Buxian, sect hierarch. You said a great being is about to descend. Where is it? It's the key to all our efforts. Jiang Ji saw Su Qi's black and white spiritual power just now, and sensed it was not simple. Su Qi glanced at him. You have low emotional intelligence. ? Isn't it clear that the great person, the one who saves everything is me? Jiang Ji? Too shameless. And there was hope in the heart just now ice-cold, hopeless. Stop beating around the bush. Use your trump cards quick. Bei Xinxing gritted his teeth and roared. He clearly knew Su Buxian was not simple, able to easily suppress them too, able to maneuver in various abyss existences, able to control the palace they couldn't obtain, and various mysterious puzzles, making him infinitely hopeful for what Su Buxian did. This is why he joined the Starfire plan. Trump card, unnecessary, at least not necessary to use in this place now. That is not for dealing with these characters. However, Su Qi suddenly extended his hand. Space twisted, targeting the distant ground. Using this is enough. Zoom. A light mass suddenly shifted before Su Qi. Jiang Ji froze for a moment. Isn't this what I touched before? It was precisely the ancient power he encountered before, choosing the last resort, stripping it from his own body to block a strike because of the Bishop of the Nether River's power. However, it had not dissipated because the contained strength was still extremely astounding and releasing visible spatial power. This spatial power is impenetrable. The demigod's projections stared at this ancient power. Plus the stripping just now, already partly cooled, short-term cannot be integrated by others. Suddenly they fell silent, because Su Qi directly raised his palm. On the palm a peculiar mark, shining with strange blue light. In the next moment, this ancient power emitted a bizarre sound, then seemingly expanded abruptly, directly integrating into Su Qi. The Bishop of the Nether River watched this coldly. Not just it alone, the Bishop of Despair and surrounding appeared more black ships. Large numbers of monsters leaping in all directions, demon venerables. From all sides, black fog surged, densely encircling Su Qi and his company. Everyone's face looked grim. The situation hadn't improved a single bit, but moved closer to an inescapable dire straits. However, they hadn't moved, yet a black fog figure charged out with terrifying force. Su Buxian, are you still planning to escape? These words came with a screech of scattering bones, yet also chilling like a death god from hell. Su Qi paused a bit, looked over. He had stopped now, for that force also needed some time to adapt, and now there was no need to escape as all paths around were sealed completely by massive abyss enemies. The Bishop of Despair's eyes were full of killing intent, a hoarse voice carrying strange excitement. Seems we meet again finally. It wanted to see despair, fear, and regret on this person's face. Regardless for a mortal, be it newborn calf not afraid of tigers or other reasons, he had disrupted its plans. But when its true self appears in front, it had reasons to believe no one would remain without emotional turmoil. However, clearly it didn't understand Su Buxian, mistook him for an ordinary mortal. Su Buxian paused, then slightly turned to look at the Bishop of Despair, scrutinizing for a moment, slightly raising a brow and said, "Not buddies? Who are you then?" "We." Su Qi seriously pondered, then sincerely asked, "Met before?" The Bishop of Despair's expression stiffened somewhat, like a punch into cotton. All hatred and killing intent fabulously missed. For a moment, fell into suffocating silence. The Bishop of Despair could actually see a kind of sincerity on Su Qi's face. But this sincerity made its anger and hatred suddenly surge. Su Bu Xian, with endless killing intent and terrifying abyss power. "I will make you remember." Its eyes had only one target, and that was Su Buxian. The venerable that bore its power couldn't help but tremble at this moment, because the Bishop of Despair was truly angry, and spiritual energy was burning wildly. The black fog rose to the sky, stirring the wind and clouds within a 10-kilometer radius. "Su Buxian, run. The power you just assimilated isn't skilled in combat. It's not its match at all." Jiang Ji couldn't help but shout a reminder. After all, he was a former user and knew the limits of the power. He tried his best and could only barely force the opponent out of his body. A cold word, tinged with a sneering laugh, came rushing in, deadly outburst, accompanied by a terrifying emotion to drag him into hell. Even if they were killed, their souls would be imprisoned by it, tortured eternally. Yet Su Qi paused slightly, then reached out his hand. Snap! A crisp sound incongruously entered everyone's ears. And the Bishop of Despair was even more rigid in midair because a single hand crossed the distance and struck its face hard. That's right, it wasn't the venerable, but the projection face formed by its black fog. It was a substantial hit with spiritual energy. It distinctly felt the space fluctuation, but the speed was so fast that it couldn't react. And immediately after, the venerable let out a painful groan. At this moment, the venerable's body had its joints twisted apart, with various invisible hands on it, wielding incredible strength. Jiang Ji was somewhat dazed. "You got something wrong. That power isn't purely spatial, but hands with space attribute, capable of crossing spaces." Su Qi calmly pressed his hand on the ground, because at this moment, attacks from all directions had arrived, and the next moment, countless hands of space erupted massively, rising to the sky, forming a giant hand that directly blocked the attacks from all sides. On the other side, a massive fist composed of innumerable space hands, thousands of meters wide, crashed down with a roar, shattering the attacking waves of monsters. The god's son, numerous adventurers had already noticed this side but merely noted it, as everyone was still caught in fierce battles, relying on sanctuary in the palace's jurisdiction. They did not choose to take the initiative. They were still assessing the situation. Each divine son and the strength of their divine race hesitated to decide if they should intervene. To be honest, everything happening now exceeded their plans. The initial thought was to let the god's palace and the abyss clash. No fear of sky-falling battles. They could retreat safely with the projection of the divine race's power. After all, the largest was indeed the chaotic camp, outsizing both the god's palace and the abyss combined. Even if fragmented, each operating on its own, it still holds a great advantage. If it could unite, it would be the strongest force, though that remains a fantasy. Chaos is chaos because it seeks benefits and avoids risks, everyone acting for themselves. However, the plan had encountered issues, because the god's palace was caught unprepared, only just entering the warm-up stage and already being choked by the abyss, with the real forces and the grand battle yet to be brought to the forefront. Now it seems it might already be ending. If the abyss descends again, the following would be a crushing suppression, with the god's palace being overthrown. Then they must consider whether to flee. Indeed, to flee. Without the colossal god's palace to oppose the abyss, the descending power of the abyss wouldn't be something any god's son could withstand. Even with the vast divine race behind them, it would mean a dead end. If everyone were to gather together, united in resistance, perhaps there might be a chance to fight back. But achieving such a feat is less feasible than conceiving of creating a new fantasy universe. Currently, what exactly should be done? All adventurers had retreated into the palace's jurisdiction, now biding their time using points, as they were not the protagonists but came for the scraps, the weak ones. If the god's palace doesn't rise, then neither will the god's son, the divine sons, or the major forces make a move. If these great figures remain inactive, then countless adventurers, small and medium forces, will hesitate even more. Whoever moves is doomed to be cannon fodder. And many god's sons were also waiting. They couldn't decide on such an important matter, for one mishap would lead to damage to themselves or the divine race behind them. Their divinity connected with entities from the old days, gods, and divine races, all expressing a wait-and-see attitude. They aspired to be the ones reaping benefits as dragons and tigers fought. Of course, they were also willing to acknowledge this point, and didn't mind opposing the abyss, for the terror and aims of the abyss target every single life. Everything and everything was compressed into the word benefit, which was their ultimate aim. Lei Yun looked into the distance. Naturally, they were also paying attention there. The battlefield above was not something they could meddle with now. But below, they had seen the god's palace send tens of thousands to save one person, and now, that place, the carriers of ancient abyssal forces had all gathered. The domain formed by black fog enveloped it, with a massive siege happening within. "What on earth is happening?" Qinsheng quietly said. The divine sons were also near Lei Yun. The status of the gods behind them was not very high in the presence of various gods. So much of the more secret information couldn't be known firsthand. Lei Yun slightly squinted, and the god behind him naturally had already discovered. The abyss used a grand ritual and everything prepared over countless ages to directly imprison the passage of powers descending from the god's palace. Lei Yun pointed at the hurricane formed by the black fog. The god's palace also has preparations. There is the key to opening the passage. Previously, there had been a massive explosion of divinity, but it was blocked by the descending black fog from the abyss side. Now that side is even a danger zone. Some were considering whether to help, but the returns and risks involved were uncertain. Because everything there now was a collision of ancient forces, they themselves hadn't enough influence to act effectively. To help, they would have to open the passage to the old days, bearing their own gods and divine races' powers, which meant there would be no turning back. Someone moved. Lei Yun suddenly raised an eyebrow. Among over 100 palaces on site, the number of god's sons was far more than it appeared. Not to mention the divine sons. A team like his had over 30 divine sons. Some god's sons had gathered over 100 divine sons. Add to that numerous top forces also composed of divine sons. Such power is truly considerable. Yet, no one wanted to be the first to take on the risk. But now, some couldn't hold back and moved. It was a group of divine sons. Lei Yun looked over. They began the divine summon. The passage opened. Divine light descended from the heavens. Unlike other light clusters' descent, it directly channeled through their bloodlines, divinity summoning onto themselves. And once this group moved, the hesitance in many divine sons' expressions also disappeared, and surprisingly, they too moved in unison. Power from all directions began to merge, charged into the monster tides, using roaring energy to fiercely strike into the black fog. Qinsheng watched this scene, unsurprised. A crowd, with no way out, even if it means risking everything, will grasp the last straw of survival. Divine sons were not all dignified, revered beings. After experiencing great upheavals and countless ages of baptism, some divine sons were left with nothing but their bloodlines. They needed a chance, needed this opportunity to seize the future. Otherwise, the balance breaks. The true chaotic world arrives, Abyss seizing everything. In such a future, they would only face a dead end, never rising again, allowing the fate they carried to regain a chance for glory. Thus, they must bet it all. So what should we do? A divine son gently said. Lei Yun looked over there. The divinity on his body also soared into the sky. His actions already announced what he would do next. We love the chaos of everything, yet hate breaking balance. But now it seems there aren't many choices left for us. He was speaking the truth. Once the balance between the God's palace and the abyss is broken, it doesn't matter which side completely takes everything, neither would be good for them. Massive divinity connected to the old days, opened the passage, ancient powers falling from within. Still, many were delaying, though it didn't stop them from bringing ancient powers, directly approaching the black fog quickly. We only do one thing. That is to open a breach for those inside. They would assist, but definitely not overly invest. The true power was reserved for the end. Everyone gathered in one direction codify. Apart from Lei Yun, there were roughly 10 more God's sons. They didn't speak, mutually holding indifferent expressions, just lightly raising their hands. Come on! Lei Yun along with Qinsheng and the group of divine sons did the same. They were both collaborators and allies. Terrifying power truly converged. Everyone present was a divine son, each carrying ancient powers linked to their bloodlines. What they could unleash, even if somewhat restrained, hidden, was unbelievably astonishing. Boom! All attacks erupted vigorously. Terrifying power kept bombarding that black fog domain. The Abyss's domain was so strange, unsettling. No one knew what was happening inside. Their task was merely to disrupt, opening a path as much as possible. If the other side couldn't counter, then they'd naturally retreat. If that were the case, the fruits blossoming from the world tree might all be devoured by the abyss. Terrifying power was tearing a gap in the black fog domain. The abyss's power was stronger than imagined, and the strange power continued ceaselessly. Even if they instantly tore a gap, it would be repaired instantly. This black fog domain was exceedingly vast. After all, it was formed by the Abyss Bishop's powers imprisoning it. Inside, tens of thousands of heavenly destiny people and millions-level monster tides were in frantic slaughter. Not to mention the numerous venerables bearing Abyss power and those two most terrifying Abyss Bishops. The varied battles erupting inside were definitely not simple. A slight gap opened, and already a massive amount of blood energy surged out. Everyone could sense the intensity inside. I seem to have seen a glimpse. A God's son's eyes had hook jade rotating. There are brutal screams, countless corpses. Unclear whose? Monsters? Heavenly destiny peoples? Everyone. Don't wait. Strike with full force. Open a gap. No matter how, we can know. They didn't speak, but the gathered power was 5 times larger than before. Could be seen how much reserved strength everyone held. Yet even now, they still held back a considerable part. Everyone was holding back for later. However, the power now exploding was sufficient. The torn gap in the black fog was notably larger than before. Moreover, Lei Yun slightly frowned. For some reason, the black fog domain seemed not as powerful as before, not only torn open with huge gaps layer after layer. The surrounding black fog also boiled and surged, as if affected by something. Wait! The black fog is dissipating. Our power destroyed it. A divine son just opened his mouth and found other divine sons looking at him like he was an idiot. How could they alone destroy such a vast black fog domain? Careful! Everyone unconsciously stepped back. To be frank, the black fog domain could only possibly be retracted by the Abyss Bishop themselves. If so, then the situation might not be good. In that case, they'd prepare to keep themselves safe. Abyss Bishop was an absolutely terrifying existence, and the power they were now dealing with was demigod power, not the gods. The god was yet unable to fully open restrictions for descent here. However, there was a gap even between demigods. The Abyss Bishop's power, endlessly terrifying, was definitely a force they currently couldn't compare to. Nevertheless, the black fog domain was now starting to shrink. like a balloon, rapidly withdrawing. Everyone's eyes shifted, watching this scene. From the edges started appearing numerous corpses, black bodies from the monster tides, flesh surging, or scorched into charcoal by great energy annihilation. And it was retrieving faster. Everyone's eyes grew more suspicious as they saw all kinds of abyssal energy shattered into fragments, as if blasted apart, scattering aimlessly everywhere. Regardless, the descending ancient power clusters wouldn't easily be destroyed due to the death of their carriers. They themselves were fused with will, conglomerates of ancient power, projections of the fundamental force. Although, now these abyssal light clusters were all blown apart. Instead, up to now, they hadn't seen any power clusters appear from the god's palace side. What's going on? Where are those two terrifying abyss bishops? These dead monster tides are not important, those two abyss bishops are most crucial. Their power was at least tenfold these monster tides, demon combined. And very soon, the black fog domain was rapidly retreating. At the same time, more sounds and presences appeared within their sight. Although the tide of monsters at the periphery had been wiped out, as it contracted, they could see the battle still raging on. They finally saw the heavenly destiny people and a great number of venerables. A large number of heavenly destiny people were fighting, unleashing their ancient powers, stirring tumultuous waves alongside the venerables. However, the venerables at this moment looked grim, for they were being suppressed, retreating step by step. More importantly, they looked towards the very center. Boom! A violent explosion echoed thunderously. A massive amount of black fog had returned entirely to its source body, within the projection of the Bishop of Despair. And simultaneously, they witnessed a scene that left them stunned. The bishops they feared, Bishop of Despair and Nether River Sect. The bodies hosting the two vast powers of the abyss were being effortlessly held by one person, spinning rapidly in place, dragging an even regular circle across the ground. The storm generated by the spinning shot skyward, forming a fierce cyclone. The venerables' bodies crumbled inch by inch, long since past consciousness, leaving only a hoarse voice of rage. Sue! Unfortunately, the moment it was spoken, it was drowned by the furious wind noise. The three demigods and heavenly destiny people had now regained their strength, dealing with the remaining venerables from afar. Bei Xinxing and Yang Jian also began their slaughter after Su Qi took control. As for Jiang Ji, he was protecting the still in divine expansion phase and Nan. He watched Su Qi, fiercely hammering the two abyss bishops, feeling a complex emotion. He hadn't even developed 1% of that ancient power. Yet Su Qi unleashed all his abilities. The various abilities developed maximized his power. The key was that Su Buxian even named them. Names like Eternal Harmony Fist, Social Shake Hands. The names were bizarre, but his actions were decisive. Honestly, having survived from the brink of despair, Jiang Ji undoubtedly breathed a sigh of relief, but seeing the ancient power he used being manipulated into various forms by Su Buxian, he felt a bit strange, as if a mecha he could not control, being stood upon by Su Qi. The Bishop of Despair was frantically gathering strength, but now the body it inhabited was already unconscious, cracking, the spiritual energy and so on were all burnt out. It was utterly powerless. Damn it! Damn! If it could unleash all powers at will, this guy would be dead for sure. How could it have ended up like this? And this guy? What is going on? From a once utterly weak mortal, now able to easily harness that ancient power, directly developing it to 100%, achieving perfect compatibility, and destroying the situation, opening a path to the god's palace. Meanwhile, Nether River Sect's bishop didn't speak. Its expression was somber, seeing Su Qi almost perfectly wield that ancient power. Though in its primary body's eyes, that ancient power was merely a remnant of the ancient battlefield, if placed on the battlefield of the past, would pose no threat at all. But now it effortlessly shattered all their restraints. The difference lies in the vessel. The choice of venerables could not unleash their true power. However, it is not the time to be concerned about this. The battle above raged fiercely, The god's palace had been shattered at one corner. Various battle lines were withdrawing, given more time, waiting for that stronger layer of existence to descend. Then the god's palace would be hopeless. Nether River Sect's bishop was gathering momentum. It was extremely calculating. Knowing that Su Buxian's control over ancient power was incredible, it foresaw this outcome, thus feigned weakness early, also causing a quick collapse here. But it did not matter, because the real target is the Child of Destiny. The guy is still unaware, for these ancient abyss powers endowed with will can, through the totem, execute self-severance, and thereby detonate all current strength. Just need a moment. Brother Su, Jiang Ji now exclaimed. Because Anan's body was covered again with rituals, a previous outburst was only a trial, not successful. This time instead triggered more waves. Numerous rituals flowed like water along cracks, spreading from beneath Anan. The thing hidden within his body felt the urgency at this moment. Rituals were erupting frantically, divinity prepared to store and ready to explode at any moment. And at this instant, Nether River Sect's bishop coldly smiled. The Abyss Totem long prepared the deadly self-destruction button. Though reluctant to admit, but this mutual destruction method is the only way to resolve it all. Nether River Sect's self-destruction would unleash all descending powers. Through the Abyss Totem, completely exploding, it knew well enough of the terrifying force, sufficient to annihilate everything within the recent range. Even if Su Buxian might survive with ancient power, however, it guarantees the Child of Destiny's certain death. Boom! A 50-kilometer radius. The ground suddenly collapsed 100 centimeters, only because its force already poured 1% out. And similarly, this mere 1% instantly caused the venerable bearing its strength to suddenly swell and turn into a blood mist. At the same time, an immense surge of blood energy erupted. The Bishop of Despair watched this occurrence, with a flicker of suspicion in his eyes. Wait! I am still. I haven't. Unfortunately, the Nether River Sect Bishop didn't look at him, instead gazing at Su Buxian. You must live well. In his calm, profound gaze only blood red could be seen. Lord Blood Demon is very interested in your body. All the strength in him had begun to explode in a chained, rumbling fashion like gears turning. The ground within a 50-kilometer radius was rapidly quaking and sinking, simply due to the raging impact of the blood energy. Yet Su Qi gently looked at him, smiling. Seems like I've learned something else. Every being marked by a totem can self-destruct. This seemed like a punishment, yet also a trump card in a desperate plight, dragging others down to die together. And this point shouldn't be underestimated, because the people of the Abyss are all maddened to the extreme, and who knows what might happen. Even if the Nether River Sect Bishop self-destructed, it wouldn't have too severe a consequence. After all, the power descended was merely a minuscule portion of his true form, barely worth mentioning. But the good news is, once self-destructed, the Nether River Sect Bishop's main body could no longer descend new power onto this new continent. Still, thank you. Su Qi's smile never diminished. Thank you? The Nether River Sect Bishop instinctively sensed something was wrong. Yet he still ignited the fuse for self-destruction, with massive stretches of land annihilating from afar to near, along with numerous corpses also turning into blood energy. From afar to near, from the sky dome to the ground, this contraction prevented any chance of escape. No opportunity at all. Why would you say thank you? The Nether River Sect Bishop watched Su Buxian smile, and suddenly his eyebrows twitched, because Su Qi's black eyes suddenly wavered slightly, and in the next moment, a projection appeared in his pupils. His whole body began to tremble, and with one glance, he felt extreme fear and instantly suppressed suffocation. And his eyes were filled with terror. Who exactly are you? Su Qi's smile never wavered, and as he extended his hand, the totem on the other collapsed abruptly, because a massive amount of strength was locked by him. Under the pupil's tight control, the blue sigil in Su Qi's hand was devouring everything in the opponent's totem. I was wondering how to fill this pit, but fortunately, You came to me voluntarily. Su Chi's words continued to come as the Nether River sect bishop's expression showed signs of terror. The bishop of despair beside him couldn't move, as the massive blood energy enveloped him as well. That's why I said thank you. The Nether River sect bishop at this moment finally realized something, because this portion of strength with his will was now being madly devoured by the blue sigil. He could feel some terrifying traces hidden within Su Buxian, all sorts of marks that were terrifying to the extreme. Yes, not just terrifying, but terrifying to the extreme, and of all kinds. And the power he unleashed was used as energy to illuminate these terrifying traces. Regrettably, apart from shock, he no longer had the time to convey any information, and this portion of will couldn't escape the absorption of the blue sigil. It's like light, clearly everywhere. But when passing through a black hole, there's no way to escape. The only thing he could do was leave a mark on Su Buxian, to provide information about this damn child to the main body. Su Chi didn't care, just gently said, "Actually, there's no need to bother. The few masters of your home are far more eager to take my life." But the Nether River sect bishop, with this part of his will, was completely devoured. Only the bishop of despair, still trapped within, continued to roar, "Su Buxian, I will never let you go." Another trace of the black fog remained, engraved like a curse within. Su Chi wasn't concerned. Traces are indeed something many powerful beings use to mark things, and adding traces is easy. As long as one lives, an abundance of traces are left every moment. But to erase them oneself is as difficult as climbing to the heavens, unless leveraging the old days. However, the more traces devoured by the old days, the more ominous it becomes. Boom! A massive and grand sound erupted at this moment, and Nan floated in the air, eyes tightly closed, with numerous rituals continually pouring out from him. A multitude of different divinities soared into the sky. At this moment, like a sun falling to the earth, a massive light without any obstruction burst furiously into the ancient battlefield projection, rushing into the old days. At the same time, the dark tide-like deep space could now be seen glimmering with an abundance of starlight. The path belonging to that part of the god's palace finally opened. A vast power of holy light was rumbling down from within. Jiang Ji muttered, "Did it succeed?" "It didn't just succeed like that?" Su Chi didn't answer but instead looked up, smiling. "I have to say, the bellringer can indeed be considered the current leader of the god's palace." This inexplicable remark caused Jiang Ji, Bei Xinxing, and Yang Jian to show confused expressions. Its command was more formidable than imagined. Su Chi softly said, "The so-called destruction of a corner of the god's palace plunging into collapse was, in fact, to draw all the truly powerful strengths that could hinder divinity in the abyss into the god's palace, all the restraints, creating the best opportunity for the divine explosion at this moment. The god's palace was not entirely useless, but rather prepared everything meticulously." The three demigod projections looked at Su Chi's analysis, surprise flickering in their eyes. Having such command was impressive, but being able to see through it at a glance was definitely not simple either. With intent fixed on Su Chi, "Gentlemen, join us in going to the god's palace. At this stage, we've temporarily averted the crisis, but next," the demigod looked at the projection. "The distance of the ancient battlefield projection from the new continent is getting closer. That vast whirlpool in the deep space has already formed a bottomless abyss. In any case, being in the god's palace is more secure than outside." Jiang Ji was somewhat tempted. After all, this was the god's palace, the god's palace. Being able to fight alongside it was 100 times better than being a rogue force outside. He hurriedly looked at Su Chi, winking. After all, they were people of the hustler's sect. Such matters naturally required Su Buxian's decision. But Su Chi patted his shoulder, showing a reassuring "I understand" smile, then looked at the three demigods. "No need, we don't need it." The three demigods, though refused, did not ask again, as everyone had their choice, but this assistance they naturally remembered. Once the world tree's flowering was over, there would naturally be reward. After all, the true God's palace had returned. An era of countless divine beings would also arrive. Then we shall take our leave. The child of destiny must also return to the temple with us. Okay. Watching the three take away the child of destiny and Nan, Jiang Ji looked bewilderedly at Su Qi. Why did you refuse? His shoulder was patted by Su Qi. Wasn't it you who wanted me to refuse? I know your genius pride. Just like the Meteor Alliance, you don't like living under someone else's roof. Jiang Ji? You must be joking. Besides, it's the God's palace. Accommodating oneself there can also be tolerated. All right. Su Qi looked towards the booming sky dome, and the gigantic abyssal beasts all around, roaring as they drew power from the deep space. The darkness hadn't diminished, but instead surged more fiercely. The God's palace merely connected the severed path, but everything was just beginning. As those few demigod projections said, a multitude of changes was causing unfavorable reactions. We should also prepare to return. Return? Jiang Ji was stunned. Did you forget? Bei Xinxing patted his shoulder. That largest palace is our territory. Yang Jian also tightened his long spear, calmly said, and during this respite period after the respite, there will be no more chances. Looking at the momentum of the three figures. Jiang Ji? No. Guys, what exactly are you planning to do? Why do I feel so uneasy? I've started to miss my ordinary brothers from the Meteor Alliance. Oh. The war and slaughter continued incessantly, but it was obvious that the situation had changed after a large amount of holy light fell in the God's palace. Not exactly suppression, but numerous adventurers from the palace ventured out again, and the divine sun also erupted once more. The flickering of the world tree was grander than before, with some forces containing origins of the world tree being received, flowing within like bloodlines. The branches and leaves have not yet sprouted, but, fear not, changes will soon emerge. At this very moment, Su Qi and others had already returned to the palace. How long will the second stage last? The balance has been regained, so the divine fluctuations aren't strong. It should last about half a day. The time is tight. We must arrange everything before the divine presence occurs. Bei Xinxing and Yang Jian are discussing. The current stage is slaughter under the divine position. No matter how fierce the killing or how tragic the losses, it doesn't matter because it fundamentally cannot change the situation or decide the outcome. Only the landing of the God in this world, known as the highest, can truly hammer things out. The slaughter is continuous, the tides of abyss monsters being massively produced, but it's also to cultivate and evolve stronger beings capable of withstanding the power of God. Everyone knew this, but no one could solve it. The main forces of the God's palace were still on the upper battlefield, but the heavenly destiny people down below were also moving, constantly engaging. Another change appearing is, bordering the extremely evil world. Vaguely at the edge, numerous worlds and lives are preparing for war. After all, entering the extremely evil world besides numerous adventurers, more were elites, heavenly pride, disciples of major forces, divine sons, etc. The massive power behind naturally awaited outside. Why the current stage is merely the second stage without reaching the crucial point? This is the reason, only that the abyss intercepted a move, creating a great trouble for the God's palace, almost causing a rollover. Now, various iceberg-like powers collided on this new continent. As for the massive part under the iceberg, it will crash from the gloomy sea surface in half a day's time, impacting everything with a ruinous force. No, it's like dreaming. We the Hustlers sect actually have a palace. Jiang Ji looked at the grandeur in front of him, mumbling at various lines. Compared to months of roughing it outdoors, I want to cry. Su Qi's calm voice carried a hint of laughter. You're talking as if I've been abusing you. In business, the beginning is always tough. Now you can laugh heartily. Sorry, I can't laugh even now. Jiang Ji stiffly turned his head. Whose business start requires fighting against the mightiest existence. He already knew Bei Xinxing and Yang Jian's Starfire plan with Su Buxian. Knowing the title, knowing they must stand firmly, knowing they must confront the abyss. What he didn't know was the level they had to confront with the Abyss, what backing the Hustler sect had, and where Su Buxian sold their Meteor Alliance brothers to. Anyway, let's get to work first. Jiang Zi's side. They were making important preparations now, setting up various rituals, part of which came from Heavenly Court, handled by Yang Jian, part from Infinite Divine Star, constructed by Bei Xinxing, and a larger part from Su Buxian, laid out by himself. This guy acted as the hands-off steward again. Though the items needed for the ritual were ready, they required spiritual energy for engraving the core parts, other areas managed by the large Shadow Army. He had seen the Shadow Army, thus was not surprised. But the core part alone required half a day's time to be fully completed, which was indeed a bit tight for him. As for Su Buxian, at this moment he was also in seclusion. He had a lot to prepare. This time, after leaving the World Tree Conference, he had things capable of determining the future trajectory. One of them was the trace of the Dimension Master. And these traces could not be used immediately. They required the right timing, the right place, and additionally required charging. And the energy needed for charging was far beyond imagination, a task not so simple. Su Qi had a plan, though implementing it naturally had challenges. Unexpectedly, the Bishop of the Nether River offered himself. This was why he thanked the Bishop of the Nether River, correctly speaking. He was eyeing the Abyss power, but without the opponent's active self-detonation, he couldn't easily obtain it, unlike the Bishop of Despair. His power was not absorbed much due to his obstruction-bearing will, and this blue mark on his hand couldn't engulf the energy surpassing the opponent's will. And its eruption also successfully completed the charging of a trace. In other words, now, as long as the right timing is found, the divine summon can be used to call forth an ancient force buried in the old days dimension, which had an uncanny resemblance to a Nan. However, a Nan relied on ceremonies, storing numerous divine keys, breaking the channel's restraints. Whereas Su Qi's side was more complex, given the trace of the Dimension Master was inherently vast, combined with other powers he acquired. Furthermore, he also acquired a power from a Dimension Master, that is, the God's Eye, similar to Yang Jian's Heavenly Eye, but with significant differences. Yang Jian can predict the trajectory a few seconds ahead, whereas the God's Eye sees the traces of the future and then forces an event to occur based on probabilities. Just like before, when I said that the 3 demigods would fail in 100 breaths, in fact, they would fail in 70. But he used the power to forcibly make it happen in 100 breaths. In this way, there was more time to manipulate, so he added variables like Jiang Zi and his group to change the outcome. Such an operation, combined with the prerequisite that any one of them try to survive, allowed these 200 breaths to smoothly arrive and solve everything. This is the terrifying aspect of the God's Eye. It can only be said that each Dimension Master controls extraordinarily extravagant and perverse powers. That elder bestowed it upon him, allowing him to wield such power, even though the strength should not have been allowed outside. But Su Qi's other eye is the evil God's Eye, achieving a bizarre balance of black and white, and thus, succeeded. This part was barely maintained by other Dimension Masters joining forces to help. This, in turn, suppressed the power of the evil god. Su Qi wasn't sure how long it could last. However, the issue wasn't significant. As long as the balance wasn't lost in the short term, it was enough, considering this was just part of the strength, far from the limit Su Qi had prepared. And about this blue mark, Su Qi finally understood it from the 8 Dimension Masters. This is the core fragment. Literally, the core itself is an item. Once shattered, it produces fragments. These fragments are typically devoured, recycled by the old days, and usually disappear completely, including any traces of existence. Yet, unexpectedly, a tiny section was contacted by him and even attached to him. However, even those Dimension Masters didn't know where the core fragment on his palm originated from. What intrigued Su Qi was, although the core is everything to a dimension and the key to creating dimensions, it seems that more dimensions existed beyond these 12. At the same time, thanks to this core fragment, he successfully connected with various traces they had arranged and could absorb and recharge with matching energy. How should I say this? Everything seems to be specially prepared for this moment. Su Qi stared at the core fragment in his palm. He wasn't sure if it was an illusion, but the core fragment seemed to establish a seamless connection with him after absorbing energy. It could absorb various energies and transform them. Currently, there are 8 dimension traces in it that could transform all kinds of energy into corresponding strengths. Is this the characteristic of this core? Su Qi didn't know what changes would occur later, but if this trait was used well, it could give him the power to control everything. Of course, this was just an exaggeration of its role. Currently, the sole purpose is to complete charging these dimension traces. Only a demigod-level power, even if only partially descended, barely filled one trace. Not to mention, this blue mark has already absorbed a lot of energy prior, wanting to activate other traces. Su Qi paused. Each trace requires the energy of at least one demigod or above as a base. Previously, the blue mark followed him along, occasionally absorbing various energies, and some dimension traces might require even more to fully charge. If initially, Su Qi thought all this land of extreme evil was just a new round of confrontation between the Abyss and the God's Palace upon revival. The prelude to the war of terrifying beings like the evil god and the deities of the God's Palace. When seeing the immortal path steal, the Terminator witnessing numerous omens, ancient paradise, and the Dimension Masters, he already noticed it seemed something significant was about to happen. Additionally, Su Qi paused. Xiao Meng, help me contact them. Okay, Master. Xiao Meng currently possessed an astonishing size. Its computation power had qualitatively leaped. Because Su Qi entered the ominous universe, bearing traces and attracting extraordinary omens from within, more importantly, Xiao Meng evolved supremely with the help of the Master of the Divine Machinery Kingdom. After making a bet with them, he shared a lot of information, including Xiao Meng and Xiao O, which also received assistance from the Master of Fantasy and is now in a slumber resembling sleep. Yet a close look reveals it is changing incessantly. The fantasy stone inside seemingly alters everything. This part Su Qi wasn't aware of what the Master of Fantasy did. But it's not a significant issue as Xiao had long signed a slave, a member contract with the Hustlers sect. All bestowed power was part of the Hustlers sect. At this moment, Su Qi had reached out to Brother Huang and the others. Brother Huang. Su Qi's familiar voice transmitted over. But Brother Huang fell into silence, then suddenly erupted with extreme anger. Su! Bu! Xian! You! Beep beep beep. Master! I have screened out unrefined words for you. Xiao Meng is indeed so considerate. However, he could understand, having used Brother Huang as a tool this time, calculating him step by step into the fire pit, being cunning and sly but still caught and unable to escape. In this light, being angrily scolded is normal. Of course, whether to listen is entirely up to himself. After a 2-minute-long mute, Su Qi commented calmly with a smile. All right, Brother Huang. Calm down. So, what's the situation up there? Brother Huang took a deep breath, but still, you could tell he was speaking through gritted teeth. This fire pit is burning much hotter than you imagined. The Hustlers sect members were thrown here, having gone through 7 direct battles. Without the temple's protection, they probably wouldn't have all made it out whole. Standing on this stage isn't easy, but surviving is even harder. Su Qi chuckled lightly. Is that so? But I believe with you, Brother Huang. The problem isn't significant. Brother Huang. Quite a compliment, this guy. Really thought he could be brushed off with just a couple of words. Where are you now? Don't worry. I haven't run away. I'm on the battlefield below, preparing some things. You know what's going to happen, right? The upcoming situation will turn into a true apocalypse. Brother Huang's voice was hoarse, with a very heavy tone. Yes, I know. Su Qi replied easily. That's why I'm preparing. You're preparing a... Brother Huang gritted his teeth, eventually sighing heavily. Do you really want the Hustlers sect you created to always be on the brink of annihilation? Now participating in the war with the Abyss so deeply involved, even handing over the yellow robe to himself and cooperating with the bellringer. Already at the forefront, essentially allowing no chance to leave whole. In the eyes of usually cautious Brother Huang, it was essentially risking life for the future. The Hustlers sect is newly established, with resources and foundation not yet solidified. There's no need for such risks. A mistake could lead to total destruction. Is this kind of risk really worth taking? Brother Huang heaved a heavy sigh, genuine words from him at this moment, showing the Hustlers sect held enough weight in his heart. After all, being this priest was still a pleasant experience. I know your concerns, Su Qi said indifferently, but have faith in me as the sect hierarch. Isn't it precisely the lack of faith that worries me so much? Then let me bolster your confidence a bit. Su Qi snapped his fingers gently. In 6 hours, you'll witness the glory of the Hustlers shining upon this sky dome. Another false promise. Another false promise. And the promise is so grand, so unsettling. Old Huang looked at the disconnected Starfire chip, feeling a tingling on his scalp. To be honest, even now, he doesn't know what Su Buxian intends to do, but neither making a deal with the bellringer, increasing the divine presence list by 300 members of the Hustlers, nor could it be something a small, unknown sect leader could achieve. He became a priest of the Hustlers sect all thanks to Su Buxian. This guy creates unimaginable, unpredictable events, and accomplishes them in a jaw-dropping manner. Old Huang sighed. He looked at the floating island formed under this ancient battlefield projection, attracted by the singularity. The power of black and white is fiercely battling. 6 hours, huh? I'm not looking forward to it at all. So, Old Huang, you're at Sundara, huh? The sudden sound of Su Buxian made Old Huang widen his eyes. Weren't you damn disconnected? The sudden return almost made him spit out. Also, this is not Sundara. He was telling the complete truth. Don't worry, I just forgot to mention something, Su Qi said with a faint smile. What? Old Huang said grumpily. Do you still remember the temple where you served as a priest? Huh. Old Huang raised an eyebrow, glanced at the projection of the god's palace in the distance, and said, Of course, what's the matter? Back then, it was because of theft and misappropriation in a temple that he was hunted by the bellringer for half a year. Before, in the trial land, it was also through the power of the temple that he recovered his almost burnt-out soul. Naturally, Su Qi's slightly smiling tone made Old Huang feel uneasy. Borrow it for a while. Are you crazy? 5 minutes later. Only then did Su Qi completely disconnect. The sudden return was to give Old Huang some breathing space from a barrage of surprises, knowing his resilience was quite strong. The temple, huh? The god's palace is made up of various temples. And temples, in essence, are the immortal quality of palaces. Old Huang, once being a priest of one of the temples in the god's palace, is like having partial authority, able to use the power of the temple, which is why he could quickly recover from the soul injury. This matter is best entrusted to him, especially to bypass the god's palace's attention. It's not necessarily about hiding, but Su Qi squints, as those 3 demigods once said. There are traitors within the god's palace that could cause major failures in previous stages, almost steering plans towards an unforeseen direction. Traitors like this could not have low status, very likely not just an individual, but a group. Anyhow, multi-line operations. Su Qi watched as his palace points continuously increased. Within 6 hours, he needs to raise the palace's quality once more to perfect. Once it reaches that quality, it will have the sanctuary ability of a temple, can automatically absorb surrounding energy, and perform large-scale teleportation, defense, etc. This is very important. It is the foundation of the Hustler sect and an important step afterward. However, to be safe, Su Qi softly self-talked, then slowly drew out a feather containing divinity. First, gradually bring out the bottom cards that can be summoned early. At this very moment, in the vastness of the old days, there are numerous gigantic, vast projections, faintly visible within. Although the surroundings are a terrifying realm of black and white, the traces of each silhouette still shine and burn within black and white. just like the sun, even if the old days around it were crazily devouring. Having devoured countless ages, it still couldn't drown out the light of God. This is God. Crossing the sequence path, crossing the life level, every move they make is enough to stir the star river. Every thread of strength can easily destroy a world. The traces on them are naturally completely different. Each streak contains the data of several worlds, able to burn countless ages without exhaustion. This is the power of God. And at this moment, there is a burning star presenting a sort of totem appearance. From within it flickers a massive projection. It slowly lifted its head, seemingly just waking up from the darkness. Its totem appeared feather-like, but the eyes gazed into the black and white, slowly flickering with awareness and spirit during its burning process. Looks like the day has finally come. I've already been awakened by that little fellow, Du-En. Since I've been divinely summoned, it means the restrictions have been lifted. Next I can… It suddenly paused, because something was amiss. The surrounding old days still had a large amount of ominous made chains, tightly locking this area. It clawed through the surrounding old days, using the burning light to penetrate, quickly seeing the surrounding godly prison that is formed by numerous ancient gates, firmly locked by countless chains, currently a bit loosened, but not yet to the point of opening. It frowned. Why haven't they woken up? I was awakened earlier because of my angel bloodline or because of the superpower dimension. It softly mused to itself. It is the pigeon god that Su Qi previously encountered, a discarded child of the angel divine race. Its divine son is Du-En encountered in the superpower world, and previously, Su Buxian's identity as the heavenly destiny people was also granted by it. The key reason it can appear in the present world and leave marks is not only because of the special angel bloodline, which allows it to move within the old days and escape from the prison of God, but also because its teacher is a terrifying presence of the superpower dimension, possessing superpower world strength. Although superpower is merely a special dimension pursuing the extreme of ability, it is a force on par with the old days in terms of priority rules. Therefore, the superpower dimension was destroyed very early. It is said someone snapped their fingers and the superpower dimension crumbled instantly. And countless people have been searching for the shattered superpower dimension, including the abyss. After all, this was a terrifying strength comparable to the old days. It left little clue for its descendants, believers, because the superpower dimension was too massive. It's not something they could dabble with. However, an abyss venerable inexplicably set its sight on that world, forcing it to use superpower to summon the detached will from the old days, descending into the superpower world. Just unexpectedly, before it could exert its power, a little fellow had already resolved the crisis. Su Buxian. It still remembered the little fellow's name, initially wanting to hand over the leaf representing the identity and mission of the heavenly destiny people to its divine son, Du-En. However, that fellow actually bore the sequence power of the angel divine race, and it applied to the God's palace for the trajectory prediction of the Eye of Destiny. The dead leaf of the heavenly destiny people given to Du-En would incur great disaster, yet giving it to Su Buxian seemed to bring a reversal. Thus, it chose Su Buxian then. Wonder how that kid is doing now. The pigeon god said lightly. It had left its own feather with that fellow. Although it's just the week of first sequence, the ability to save that world naturally warranted a generous gift. Its feather, even if weakened with only a bit of strength, should suffice for him. After all, this was an emblem of the god, letting the kid walk confidently in the present world beneath the extraordinary. Just now is not the time to think about this. It still pondered why it awoke ahead of time. There is a divinity penetration through old days, awakening me. But it's not the time yet. At this moment, in the prison of the god, large chains imprison everything, not only numerous gods but also those beings of the abyss within. These ominous chains are not directed at any camp but serve as a means of mutual restraint. Cannot interfere. Yet due to its special bloodline and having sequence power, it could try to leave through this trial. After all, it had done this once before, only leaking some energy then. Now, it plans to bring a substantial amount of strength to descend into the present world, a completely different scenario. Even with the chains now loosening and changing constraints, it remained hesitant. Yet this time, it saw the surrounding ominous, chains pulling out from deep space, moving to attack it, raising its brows slightly. Troublesome. The dormant state is a form of protection for any god, contrasting with awakening, which naturally attracts run-death marks of the old days, increasing ominous forces honing in. Sigh. Although not sure why, the Kid Duen summoned me ahead, yet I've got to get out. Being of its own bloodline, this field is rapidly loosening, and soon a large number of ominous chains will snap one by one. Leaving early might also not be a bad thing. It didn't hesitate. With mighty strength, it activated its sequence power, directly virtualizing, turning into a shadow in the old days, penetrating chains toward the coordinates of the present world. As it appeared ahead of time, the ominous relentlessly chased after it. Yet, the issue wasn't significant. Since divinity could surge and communicate with God, it signified the removal of taboo. Even if it left now, it could resolve this minor trouble. Confidently, now that it was out, it would lead its kin to rebuild their glory. The twisted passage began rumbling, black and white of the old days started fading, a vast amount of brilliance seeping in through the twist. Its strength twisted within into a miniature light cluster, a necessity for the descent, else the space of descent couldn't bear it. The twist and bundling of this light made it somewhat uncomfortable, as only a portion of strength could fit, but not a major issue. It had already plotted the direction according to the divine summons coordinates. Next, it would descend directly upon the opposite. Shoot! A mass of black and white light scattered. Twisted strength momentarily blinded it from clearly observing surroundings, partly due to intense compression to dodge ominous pursuit. Keeping small, creating little commotion, reducing traces, concealing everything. And soon did it see within the twist, a glow of its own divine bloodline beaconing it like a lighthouse. This is it. Without hesitation, it charged forward. Boom! The sensation of the moment was immensely satisfying. The power of the bloodline felt like a refreshing breeze. Duen, as its descendant, although extending generations, did not diminish the strength of this bloodline across eras. This divinity simply, perfectly aligned with itself. It was like a part of its own body. With vision gradually clearing, it suddenly froze, staring dumbly at itself. Sleek feathers, two slender red claws, and in front, a massive figure with a somewhat familiar voice and laughter. Long time no see, pigeon god. Boom! The entire deep space emitted sharp, varying waves. Singularity attracted whirlpools, visibly showing many rapidly spinning neutron stars, expelling mighty energies every single second, creating plenty of splendid anomalies. Yet phenomena erupting in the deep space couldn't deliver a destructive blow to the new continent, for this space is isolated, unique, under the sanctuary of the World Tree. This occurrence signaled the crumbling of limits set in the past at this very moment. The clash between God's palace and abyss wasn't as fierce as before, as only less than an hour remained till their predicted time. On the battlefield below, everyone engaged in frantic combat, unceasing, all pierced through the monster tide, unleashing their utmost power because only now they could fight desperately. Failing to seize every moment to fortify themselves, no chance would follow. Meanwhile, inside the temple, Pigeon God displayed an aggrieved expression. Thus, I understood. You used the feather I left, leveraging the temple's strength, to establish a divine summon, intending to enlist my help, hence summoning prematurely? Exactly. Su Chi held up a thumbs up. Worthy of a god. Understanding in an instant. Understanding my ass. Pigeon God almost lashed out. What do you take a god for? And summon prematurely? Do you understand what you've done? Now there's trouble. It stared unblinkingly, eyes filled with uncontainable dread. No big deal. Su Chi lightly chuckled. I've prepared for your arrival. Pigeon God silently eyed the birdcage, branches, bird feed. The kid even had some divine gold from the last meeting, now seeing, indeed as expected. Ominous. Spat out these two words. Ahead of trajectory advent evoking colossal strength, triggering absolute taboo. Its voice was raspy, heavily laden. Even I couldn't halt it. It raised its head, sight piercing the ceiling of the temple. I've sensed it, the ominous coming. You likely remain unaware what ominous entails. It's terrifying, silent, unseen. Ordinarily, this realm under the sanctuary of the World Tree wouldn't allow its easy emergence. Yet, lo and behold, now completely surpassing sanctuary's limits. Thus, Su Buxian, pigeon god dramatically intoned. You now fathom the enormity of forbidden action you committed. Henceforth, even I must start fleeing, while you as a mortal will be instantly devoured by the terrifying ominous. So now you know, you've committed a taboo. Even I must flee, and you, a mere mortal, will be devoured instantly by the terrifying omen. The pigeon god's voice was heavy and hoarse. It never expected things would turn out this way. The feathers it left behind have become such variables, compelling the touch of taboo. Cannot blame a mortal, as it is a god, and those were its feathers left behind. Now, it feels the true ominous approach quickly across space. It's coming. At this moment, it said solemnly, the ominous is coming. The surroundings are twisting. The originally resplendent palace interior now seems to be frozen. The walls can be seen filled with colors, gradually being enveloped by black and white, engulfing from all directions. In the midst of twisted black and white, indescribable horrifying shadows linger, that uneasy feeling, chills to the bone. Pigeon god. The primary target of this omen is me. This taboo-triggered omen shouldn't be too terrifying. I can buy you a minute. Take care. It didn't continue speaking because it's pointless. Under such terrifying omen, mortals are like any object around and will be consumed in an instant. You're a good person. Su Qi gave a thumbs up, but you're wrong about two things. First, the scale of this omen is larger than you imagined. You can't withstand a minute. The pigeon god's spirit trembled slightly, gazing at the twisted black and white, its pupils visibly contracted. Earlier, it mentioned a terrifying omen. It roughly envisioned the scale, having spent a long time deep in the old days, familiar with everything within. If what it imagined previously was roughly the size of a mountain range. The ominous has self-initiative, though uncertain if human factors play a part, but universally acknowledged. The omen carries traces which expand its scale. The larger the scale, the more terrifying. Excluding entities that may consciously compress their scale, those are willful participations, forming the second shape of ominous, rare but all branded as destroyer. And now, appearing in pigeon god's view. Within the massive twists, it wasn't a mountain range-sized omen it imagined, but a galaxy-like ominous spinning within. Masses of horrifying omens seemed to be erupting from the twists. Oh? It widened its eyes. Is this a freaking omen? How can it be this terrifying? Massive? Did I break heavenly laws? It just emerged early, and though taboo was triggered, the crime was not so severe. Omen Lord, this speaks to your second mistake. Su Qi naturally saw this scene. It's not coming for you. The pigeon god paused. Its expression suddenly changed, as all the omens struck from every direction. Massive, terrifying omens aimed at Su Buxian in the center. It widened its eyes, shocked and disbelieving. What on earth did this person do? Why did he attract such terrifying omen? Did he provoke an ominous nest? This scale, even many gods aren't at this level, yet it's affecting this person. Also, in the current situation, it suddenly looked at Su Buxian. As Su Buxian lightly raised his hand, the ceremony prepared within the palace erupted with starfire. Starfire densely packed, like clusters of stars. More importantly, another power it couldn't see through. And all this faintly separated the ominous, as if concealing everything impermeable. Those omens surging out suddenly stopped as if losing the target. With trembling pupils, the pigeon god was surprised. attempting to speak. Su Chi put a finger up, smiling slightly. Shoo! He pointed at the star river within the omen, where a pair of black and white, twisted eyes, like a snowflake screen, constantly shaking, twisting, terrifying eyes, now emerging within the ominous star river, as if from a horrifying stream of consciousness film, sanity-straining eyeless eyes. Black and white lines crazily twitch around the eyes, hair-raising chills. And right now, firmly staring this way, seeing this scene, the pigeon god couldn't stop trembling. That is, the eyes of Cleaner, the very omen's second form it mentioned earlier, a conscious horrifying entity, didn't expect it to appear. It didn't dare to take a breath. But Su Chi was calmer than it. The god. After all, this wasn't his first time seeing it. When beginning to carry the Dimension Master's traces and parts of strength, those creatures were initially cautious, fearing the traces might explode if too much given, letting the ominous break through Su Buxian's starfire, engulfing him. But later they found, this starfire is virtually a bug-level existence. They even gathered together, researched, continuously tested, experimented, eventually finding as long as the starfire quantity is ample, any amount of ominous can be defended against, even Cleaner. And Lord of all dimensions, used every thought, every power to help him redesign various ceremonies, all deeply embedded within. This is also one of the reasons why Su Chi chose to summon the pigeon god early. Even without being at the World Tree Conference, he could resist the ominous in this present world. This is also information obtained from the Dimension Masters, and likewise, at this very moment, Su Chi looked into those eyes, trying not to cause any commotion or leave any traces. He just needed a little time. It would naturally end. Because, boom! The holy light emanating from the World Tree violently shattered the twisted, ominous black and white, breaking it like glass. The next moment, color returned once again. Everything that was just still has been restored. It's the power of the World Tree. Although the pigeon god was shocked to the point of being unable to recover its mood for a long time, after all, it was still a god, and it looked at the World Tree. The World Tree is the only force capable of opposing the ominous. In such a realm, no matter how terrifying the ominous, it cannot come as it pleases. Now finally breathing easy, the pigeon god gritted its teeth. Su Buxian, what on earth was that just now? It now couldn't understand, couldn't comprehend. Su Chi snapped his fingers. That's a long story, and a waste of time. Plus, it involves taboos. You wouldn't want those eyes to come back again, right? Why not take advantage of this short time to prepare to help? Oh! The pigeon god was stunned. Prepare to help? Help with what? To build my hustler's sect. Push forward the Starfire plan. Oh. The pigeon god. I am a god, kid. And why should I have to help you? Shouldn't the Pokemon obey the one who summoned them? Damn your Pokemon. If its strength weren't compressed and restricted now, it would definitely beat up this guy in front of it. Though it indeed looks like a bird at the moment. Senior Pigeon, you know what's going to happen next. Su Chi smiled as he looked at it. You, who appeared here in advance, have a huge advantage. If you play your cards right, there could be much room to maneuver. Question mark. It felt a shiver of ominousness, unease at heart. Sorry, I have no time. I must find the divine sun. The pigeon god prepared to flee. Honestly, its sensitivity as a god was highly acute. It felt that Su Chi was complicated indeed. Earlier, it had seen the angel bloodline on this guy, and just now it witnessed that scene. As for his hustler's sect and Starfire plan, they rang alarm bells, reminding it to stay away from this fire pit. You mean Duen? Su Chi lightly laughed. He is in the hustler's sect, and his Taoist guardians are now part of us, participating in actions over at the God's Palace. Oh! The pigeon god's eyes widened. God's Palace? You joined the God's Palace. God's Palace naturally accepts various forces, but they have requirements, at least galaxy-level forces. This so-called hustler's sect, back when it was in that world, it naturally knew an unofficial plaything force. Even that could join the God's Palace? Su Chi, however, shook his head. You misunderstood a bit. It's not joining, it's cooperation. The God's Palace and my hustlers' sect exchange business. As a member of the God's Palace, the Pigeon God immediately expressed doubt. Let's not even talk about how urgent things are for the God's Palace at this juncture. In a fully extended plan, all the resources God's Palace is pressing on are beyond any single force. What can you provide? Facing the Pigeon God's skepticism, Su Chi slightly smiled. What I provide, naturally, is the service to oppose the 4 God Masters of the Abyss. The Pigeon God's eyes trembled. The 4 God Masters. It naturally knew which 4 they were. Yet in the moment of its trembling, it calmed down. Ah, young man, who are you trying to fool? Even just the Demon God is an immense entity, not to mention those 4 God Masters. Lord of Anxiety, Lord of Chaos, Lord of Blood Demon, and the most terrifying, Master of the Abyss, Evil God. All right, have you finished your words? I won't accompany you to play. Although waking me up was a bit of a complicated process, now that I'm here, I must hurry, because as you said, time is indeed limited. The Pigeon God finally said softly, Next, I must head to the God's Palace. The descent of the 4 God Masters is indeed an apocalyptic disaster event, so it must seize every opportunity possible to create an advantage. It flapped its wings, transforming directly into a stream of light, preparing to fly away. Ha! Su Chi revealed a slight grin. Looks like words alone can't stop you. However, he wasn't anxious. Neither did he show the ties between himself and the Abyss God Masters, nor did he stop with words. Because there was no need. And the Pigeon God, after flying 100 meters, its entire form suddenly trembled, pulled back by an invisible force. It was somewhat shocked. What is happening? I forgot to mention, the feather used to summon you was only half used, the other half is still with me. In other words, the vessel that carries your strength is not complete. Su Chi slightly smiled. Senior Pigeon God, rest assured and come help. Su Buxian. Time passed second by second. All the slaughter now seemed unimportant because everyone felt as if a heavy atmosphere was pressing against their hearts, as if each second increased it a bit more. The predicted half-day mark had arrived. The priests of the God's Palace had already gathered, standing at the central divine platform. The bellringer silently watched this scene. The black and white deep space above hovered like a vast black and white sea pouring down, stirring everything violently. And though the ancient battlefield projection was enormous, collecting vast amounts of starry sky fragments, it was merely a small island above. It's coming, he said softly, prepared for a long time, finally arriving at this moment. Awaken, return, the end of this war, or perhaps the end of the future. He could not say for sure, nor dared to say it clearly. All adventurers, all divine sons, desired to seize the future, but in reality, would there truly be a future? At this moment, in the deep star river, the stars suddenly lost their brilliance as if consumed by an inexplicable dark power. The endless void twisted and deformed, like faces filled with resentment peering into the world. Black and white enveloped everything, eclipsing all glory, plunging the world into dead silence. Suddenly, the starry sky cracked open into hideous wounds, as if tentacles reached out from the cosmic abyss, continuously writhing and extending. It was so eerie and elusive, leaving twisted tracks in the void, mentally oppressing countless people's spirits. The demons of the abyss are awakening. Numerous eerie shadows flickered in this chaotic and terrifying starry sky. They possessed various different forms, with additional heads, limbs twisted and deformed, and blood-red pupils floating within. Their existence itself was a challenge to the sanity of countless adventurers. Boom! The world tree spanned in the sea of old days. Enormous holy light continuously surged from bottom to top, and similarly, the power of the world tree continuously erupted, blasting open the cage in the depths of the sea of old days. With every roar, each burst of light illuminated the immense cages built for the gods during the old days, and the terrifying outlines of those indescribable entities. And now everyone heard earth-shaking roars, raising their heads to look. Those chains as vast as a star river collided and swayed in deep space. At this moment, the hearts of countless adventurers, countless heavenly prides, and divine sons were filled with an unspeakable fear. They finally knew how insignificant they truly were.